Chapter 521, A Visit to Nocturne Alley. As heavy raindrops fell, John made his unexpected appearance at Ariana's funeral, where he confronted both Dumbledore brothers with a surprising show of force. What had driven him to this point? After dealing with the aftermath of the funeral, it seemed he couldn't resist the opportunity to challenge the future legendary wizard. And as for that final punch, well, it left Dumbledore with a notably crooked nose, didn't it? "Sleep well, Ariana," John murmured softly, leaning against the tombstone. With a flick of his wand, which glowed with a soft white light, he erased the memories of the Dumbledore brothers, effectively removing any trace of his presence from their minds. "You're quick to escape, Gale," John remarked, looking up at the sky in search of Gale, only to realize that Gale had vanished into the night. Despite his efforts, John found it impossible to track down a wizard who didn't want to be found, leaving him feeling somewhat dejected. With a loud crack of his wand, he turned his attention back to the present moment. Albus Dumbledore, regaining consciousness, found himself bleeding from the nose and staring up at an infuriated Aberforth. Albus accepted the punishment silently, acknowledging it as his burden to bear. He couldn't help but wonder when his brother had grown so strong as to break his nose with a single punch. The year was 1899, a time of rapid development and change. Horse-drawn carriages and well-dressed ladies and gentlemen were common sights. John found himself in the leaky cauldron, popping a piece of hard candy into his mouth. To his surprise, the tavern seemed cleaner than in future years, though it still bore the marks of age and neglect. "I hope Hannah Abbott will take better care of this place when she takes over," John mused, aware that the tavern would eventually come under the ownership of the Abbott family. Making his way to the back alley, John tapped the walls with his wand in a specific sequence, a method of entry he hadn't used in ages, preferring apparition or the Floo network. The walls shifted, revealing the entrance to Diagon Alley, which appeared unchanged. John couldn't help but notice the boy selling dragon livers, wondering if his family had been in the business for over a century. John's true destination was Nocturne Alley, a place yet to be dominated by any so-called king and characterized by its chaos and disorder. Casting a disillusionment spell on himself, he vanished from sight and ventured into the dark streets behind Gringotts. Nocturne Alley was a haven for dark wizards, a place where those who shunned the light found refuge. Among the inhabitants were a witch obsessively gnawing at her nails, a merchant peddling voodoo dolls, and a wizard offering curses for hire. It was a land of shadows, hidden from the world. John's mission was to find materials for a soul potion, a task that would have been trivial for his future self, but posed a significant challenge without funds. Unicorn horns, rare and valuable, were his target, and Nocturne Alley was likely to have what Diagon Alley did not. In a dimly lit room, John discovered a bracelet made from unicorn horn, likely stolen or scavenged from a witch's corpse. He carefully removed 2 pieces, intending to leave, when he heard footsteps approaching. Concealing himself in the shadows, he watched as 2 tall wizards entered, carrying 3 boxes and speaking in thick Nordic accents about the treasures they had acquired, including items related to time magic from Egypt. John listened intently, realizing the significance of their conversation and the potential value of the contents within those boxes. The bald wizard lamented their narrow escape, revealing that they were poachers who had stumbled upon a pyramid. Driven by greed, they attempted to rob the tomb, but only managed to secure 3 items due to their limited strength. Among these was an ancient time turner, which they believed could fetch a high price from collectors despite its damaged state. As they discussed the division of their loot, greed took over, leading to a deadly duel. Wizard Brushbeard and the bald wizard simultaneously cast lethal spells, resulting in both their deaths. John, who had been observing from the shadows, noted their greed as he approached the remaining treasures. He discovered a small copper snake and a gemstone resembling a snake's eye in the other boxes, identifying them as alchemical creations. John recognized their significance and the skill of the alchemist who crafted them. He also examined the time turner, deducing its unique function not as a device for time travel, but for creating a specific time domain within a scene. John then explored the dark room, which contained a wealth of materials. Utilizing the Hand of Glory found on one of the wizards, he selected several items and used alchemy to fuse them into a single bag. After casting an untraceable stretching charm on the bag, he gathered all the valuable items, including those from the 3 boxes. Acknowledging the wizard's unintended generosity, John respectfully closed the door behind him, leaving the dark room and its contents to decay. With sufficient materials in hand, he contemplated the next steps in refining a soul potion. Recognizing the diminished efficacy without a complete soul, John considered a visit to Azkaban to address this issue. Finding a secluded house in the suburbs of London, John set up his cauldron and brewed a weakened version of the soul potion. Upon consuming it, he felt a slight improvement, but realized the full treatment would require a more potent version, and several months due to the scarcity of essential ingredients like unicorn horns. Determined to restore his condition fully, John resolved to confront the Dementors, planning to use the materials he had gathered to further his goals. John had crafted devices specifically designed for capturing Dementors. He examined a copper snake closely, a tool meant to guide him. Despite not fully understanding its intricate structure, John's proficiency in alchemy meant he could solve almost any mystery with ease. After a few adjustments, the copper snake animated, standing upright and shaking its tail like a rattlesnake, indicating a direction. John surmised it likely pointed towards a pyramid, rumored to be an ancient wizard's stronghold. An ancient wizard's pyramid, John mused, storing the copper snake safely. He planned to explore it after his mission to Azkaban. The following day, John arrived at the beach before dawn. Ensuring he was alone, wings sprouted from his back. Azkaban was protected against apparition, but this wasn't John's first time traversing the ocean by flight. With powerful beats of his wings, he ascended, soon becoming a mere dot against the vast sky. He soared towards Azkaban, swift as an arrow loosed from a bow. Inside Azkaban, a Dementor, notorious for sapping the happiness from its prisoners, had just driven a wizard to madness. Suddenly, an unusual chill permeated the air. The Dementor glanced towards its counterpart in the adjacent cell, initiating a conversation in their eerie, silent language. "Did you feel that? A sudden drop in temperature?" it inquired. The other Dementor responded with a hint of disdain. "Are you confused? We embody the essence of cold." This exchange highlighted the Dementor's innate cold nature, yet the first Dementor's question suggested an anomaly, a chill that even they found unusual. This subtle interaction hinted at an underlying tension, perhaps an indication of John's impending arrival and the disruption it would bring to the dark, despair-filled corridors of Azkaban. Chapter 522, Greetings, Dementor. In the dark expanse of the sea, countless dangers lurk beneath its surface. At night, the sea transforms into a realm of terror, its endless darkness resembling a colossal beast eager to devour all in its path. Even the most seasoned sailors feel the oppressive weight of the night, eroding their resolve. A young sailor, brimming with confidence, wagered with his crewmates that he could withstand a night out on the open sea. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the engulfing darkness and isolation began to gnaw at him. The sounds of the moving boat seemed to amplify in the eerie silence, echoing ominously. Driven by pride, he refused to succumb to fear. The cold crept up his ankles like a rising tide, enveloping him in its icy grasp. To distract himself, he turned his gaze skyward, seeking solace in the constellations. Dreaming of one day becoming a captain, he knew that mastering the stars was an essential skill. He found comfort in the sight of Sagittarius, grateful that the clear night sky offered an unobstructed view of the stars, which shone with a brilliance unmatched by any city lights. "You can do this," he whispered to himself, drawing strength from the celestial bodies above. But as he charted his course by the stars, the sky abruptly darkened, as if the end of the world had arrived, stripping everything of its vitality. Panicked, the sailor pounded on the cabin door, shouting, the sky has been swallowed whole." Inside, the older sailors laughed at his terror, dismissing his fears as the inability of the younger generation to withstand the ocean's darkness. Despite his attempts to explain, they remained convinced of his cowardice. Suddenly, the darkness in the sky dissipated, or rather, it moved on. A creature with bat-like wings cast its shadow over the sea, sending a ripple of alarm through the ocean's inhabitants. Killer whales called to their companions, and fish burrowed into the sand. Devoid of human intelligence, these creatures possessed a keen sense of danger, aware that a formidable presence was passing overhead. John, transformed into a shadow of destruction, had flown across the ocean from dawn until dusk. The location of Azkaban, unchanged for centuries, finally came into view, its foreboding fortress standing resolute in the darkness. From its days under Extus to the takeover by the Ministry of Magic, and now with John's arrival, Azkaban had seen little change. Descending from the clouds, John's massive form rapidly shrank into that of a human as he plunged into the sea. A shark, attracted by his presence, swam towards him with jaws agape. With a swift turn and a flick of his wand, John cleaved the shark in two, its blood attracting a frenzy of predators. Yet the sudden emergence of a terrifying dragon's aura sent them scattering in fear. With a dragon's tail aiding his swim, John navigated the waters with ease, familiar with Azkaban's secrets due to his future takeover. He aimed for a cave at the base of the island, eroded by seawater and once used by Extus to lure sailors to their doom. Since the Ministry of Magic's control, the cave had been abandoned, its existence unknown to the guards of Azkaban, who relied on Thestral carriages for transport. Emerging from the water, John flicked his tail, shedding droplets in a graceful arc. He tapped his wand against the rock wall, activating a super sense spell that mapped the surroundings in his mind. The cave, hidden and forgotten, sheltered numerous shipwrecks, their hulls soaked by the sea. A ladder within led to the upper levels, a secret path known only to him. John approached the sealed entrance of Azkaban with a determined stride. With a light tap of his wand, a burst of white light flashed, and the entrance's barriers peeled away, layer by layer, revealing the path ahead. "It's your turn now, Dementor Catcher," John murmured, pulling a red and white ball from his homemade bag and tossing it towards the newly exposed opening. The ball struck the wall, bounced upward, and upon hitting the ground, began to roll, adhering to surfaces with an uncanny ability to navigate the labyrinthine prison. John methodically deployed more than a dozen of these balls, ensuring that Dementor traps were set in every concealed corner of Azkaban. After completing his task, John descended onto a wooden boat that had run aground on the rocky shores of the island. The ship, a relic from centuries past, bore the marks of a merchant vessel long forgotten. Inside the cabin, John discovered objects covered in moss and mold. A kicked-open box spilled its contents of jewelry across the floor, but John barely spared it a glance. To him, the true treasures were the remnants of porcelain and the spoiled tea leaves, silent witnesses to the ship's ill-fated journey. No human remains were to be found, suggesting the crew had met a grim fate at the hands of Extus, an evil wizard known for his cruel experiments. Reflecting on the power wielded by wizards, John recalled Gale's ambition to change the world. Wizards, with their boundless potential and idealistic visions, often tread a fine line between greatness and extremism. Gale's dream was not to annihilate Muggles, but to instill a deep-seated fear of wizards across the continent. What would I do in his place? John pondered, recognizing the inherent dangers of such power. An idealist's pursuit often ends in tragedy. That night, John spent in the caves of Azkaban, turning it into a nightmare for the Dementors. These creatures, which thrived on the despair of prisoners, found themselves hunted. As one Dementor glided through the prison, reveling in the misery it inflicted, it sensed an unusual surge of emotion. Believing a prisoner had escaped, it eagerly pursued the source, only to be met with its own terror. Black threads emerged from the darkness, ensnaring the Dementor and dragging it into an abyss from which there was no escape. The red and white ball opened, and the Dementor was forcibly compressed into its confines, a feat made possible by the ball's mysterious ability to alter its captive's form. The once fearsome predator was now prey, its cries of anguish lost in the shadows. As the night progressed, the Dementors of Azkaban were systematically captured, their reign of terror abruptly ended by the relentless pursuit of the red and white balls. The spheres, now filled with their quarry, rolled back from whence they came, their clattering departure a stark contrast to the usual silence of despair that filled the prison. The prisoners, for once, dared not make a sound, their usual lamentations replaced by a cautious hope. The Dementors, symbols of their endless torment, had been vanquished, leaving behind a silence that spoke volumes of the night's extraordinary events. In the eerie silence of Azkaban, a legend was born, echoing only within its walls. To the outside world, the tale seemed nothing more than the ramblings of prisoners driven mad by the relentless torment of the Dementors. Yet, with the dawn's light, John unveiled a meticulously arranged collection of red and white orbs along the prison walls. He picked them up, one by one, pressing the button at the center of each orb. As they reopened, Dementors were released, each thinking they had been rescued, only to be greeted by John's smiling face. "Hello, Dementor," he said, a greeting that went unrecognized by the creatures. They were, however, familiar with the black silk that had ensnared them. Under John's watchful eye, each Dementor was dissected, their black curses and silver souls separated. John found containers aboard the ship suitable for holding the Dementor souls and secured them inside. Observing the 13 pure silver souls, he mused, "It seems that this is not enough." Deciding to extend his stay, he captured 13 more Dementors by evening, and this process continued for several days. By the time John decided to leave Azkaban, he had amassed 40 Dementor souls. There are still a lot of Dementors in this period, he noted, boarding a dilapidated ghost ship. Despite its worn condition, the ship remained afloat, never succumbing to the sea's depths. A bronze serpent was placed on the rudder, its magic serving as a guide. John's destination was a pyramid rumored to house the sands of time. The ghost ship descended to the ocean's bottom, slipping past any form of detection. The journey was shrouded in mystery, as John navigated the silent dark waters, his cargo of Dementor souls and the enigmatic purpose of his voyage to the pyramid, adding layers of intrigue to his mission. Chapter 523. Hello, Egypt. On the coast of Qusair, under the starlit sky, a young man with curly brown hair and deep-set eyes embraced his girlfriend. "Did you know," he began with a hint of pride in his voice, "that it was from here Moses led the Israelites to part the Red Sea and reach Canaan?" His attempt to impress her with his knowledge seemed to work, as she looked at him with fascination. However, when he mentioned the parting of the Red Sea, she couldn't help but smile and compare. "It's like the legend of the Flying Dutchman." No, the man quickly objected, his tone firm. "That's just a mythical legend, but Moses' story is real." As an Israeli, he was adamant about affirming the historical significance of Moses, which slightly irked his girlfriend, who had grown up enchanted by tales of the sea. Their romantic evening turned into a spirited debate, neither willing to concede. However, as the argument reached its peak, the girlfriend suddenly fell silent, her eyes widening in shock. She pointed towards the sea, her hand covering her mouth. The man, thinking he had won the argument, reassured her, "Don't worry, baby, I won't think any less of you for not seeing my point." He was about to continue their discussion when he noticed her horrified expression and followed her gaze. On the sea's surface, a faint blue light shimmered, revealing a tattered mast. Soon, torn sails, and then the hull emerged. A ghostly ship, bathed in an eerie glow, rose from the depths, its appearance stunning the couple into silence. "Is that the Flying Dutchman?" the man stammered in disbelief. On the deck, a young man named John brushed his wet hair back, magic drying it instantly. He dusted off the white crystals from his clothes, seemingly unfazed by the couple's astonishment. As the ghost ship neared the shore, John waved, the brass snake from the rudder slithering into his palm. He extinguished the soul lamp, and the ship reverted to its dilapidated state before sinking beneath the waves. Stepping onto the shore, John greeted the couple with a graceful bow. "Excuse me, where am I?" "Qusair," they managed to reply, still in shock. "It seems I still have a long way to go," John mused, the copper snake on his wrist pointing him in a new direction. He had been sailing from Azkaban for a week, guided by the snake until he reached Qusair, Egypt. Handing the soul lamp to the man, John instructed, "Hold this for me." The man complied, his hands trembling. To him, John seemed like the legendary Captain Davy Jones, the ferryman of the dead. Why would someone who ferries souls come to Egypt? He wondered silently. John retrieved his wand, casting a spell that enveloped the couple in a white light. Their fear gave way to confusion as their memories of the encounter began to fade. "Thank you for your cooperation," John said, reclaiming the soul lamp. The man nodded, still dazed. As realization dawned, he turned to his girlfriend, their previous argument forgotten. "Were we just talking?" "What are you talking about?" she asked, puzzled. "Well, but the Flying Dutchman is just a legend, and Moses is real history," he insisted, reigniting their debate. "I'd rather believe my toes can bite than that the Red Sea was parted," she retorted, and their argument resumed as if nothing had happened. John, having erased their memory of the encounter, vanished with a wave of his wand. Qusair, the port of Egypt, lay quiet as John walked its sandy, cold roads under the guidance of the copper snake. The faint blue flame of the soul lamp cast an otherworldly glow in the dark night. This lamp, housing his soul, contained the souls of 32 Dementors. With his mastery of alchemy at the 7th level, John had become adept at imbuing objects with special functions, effectively creating Horcruxes, such as the ghost ship. John could traverse the seabed with ease. He retrieved a vial of soul potion from his temporary bag and drank it, significantly improving his vision. It was a stark contrast from before, when distinguishing between Plean animals within a meter was a challenge. The brass snake's tail rattled akin to a rattlesnake, signaling John to move forward. During this era, many regions of Egypt were engulfed in barbarism, and the onslaught of a conquering empire brought further calamity. Shrouded in darkness, John's presence was enough to deter any onlookers, the flame of his soul lamp warding off the faint-hearted. Perhaps there's a better way, John pondered after covering some distance on foot. The brass snake, extending from his wrist to his wand, became his focus as he sought a hidden direction. The soul lamp illuminates the path, while the brass snake seeks it out, he mused, waving his wand and vanishing into thin air. When he re-emerged, he found himself in a different desert, the transition seamless. However, the brass snake became unresponsive, prompting John to attempt a universal fix by clapping his hands twice. When that failed, he sighed. "It seems the disorientation is a side effect of apparition. It'll need some time to recover." Surrounded by an endless desert, John was temporarily directionless, waiting for the brass snake to regain its functionality. He wondered about the magical creatures that poachers were after in such a desolate place. When a rattlesnake attempted to attack, John unleashed his dragon power, rendering the snake docile in the sand. As dawn approached, the brass snake stirred back to life. "Let's try this one last time," John resolved. If he couldn't pinpoint the location now, he would abandon apparition. Guided by the brass snake, he vanished once more, feeling as though he was being squeezed through a narrow tunnel. He relaxed, allowing the snake to lead the way. Reappearing, John found himself in a forest, a stark contrast to the desert. Although the brass snake was unresponsive again, he sensed the proximity of the pyramids. With his magical energy depleted, John surveyed his surroundings and ventured in one direction, eventually reaching a large river. The brass snake's rattling resumed, recovering quicker than before, a sign they were nearing the pyramids. Its eyes glowing red, the snake coiled in John's palm as they approached a large river. A raft, bound by invisible ropes and immune to the river's current, surfaced as if it had been submerged for years. "This feels like being in a cave," John remarked, stepping onto the raft, which dipped slightly under his weight. The brass snake slithered to the raft's bow, breaking the invisible bonds, and propelled them forward. Holding the soul lamp, the scenery blurred past them, the raft moving at a speed surpassing that of a broomstick. The creator of this raft was not only an exceptional wizard, but also a skilled alchemist, John observed, marveling at the raft's accelerating pace. After nearly an hour, as the morning sun began to rise, the raft slowed to a halt. John disembarked, and the brass snake directed him towards the final stretch of their journey, guiding him with unwavering certainty. John navigated through the dense forest, his steps deliberate and cautious. As he ventured deeper, he paused, suddenly understanding the allure this place held for poachers. Before him, a massive three-headed snake lay coiled around an ancient tree, its limbs entwined with thick vines. This was a rune snake, a rare and magical creature known for laying highly valuable eggs within its mouth, a commodity that fetched a high price on the black market. The sight of such a beast with its trio of heads was enough to send shivers down the spine of any ordinary person. However, John was not fazed, for he possessed the unique ability to understand the serpent's language. The left head sneered. Look, a lost lamb, eh? Must be that tough guy who's leading someone in again into a place where it's impossible to get out alive. The middle head murmured dreamily. I'm a lazy snake. The right head retorted sharply. Stop your nonsense. Who are you trying to impress all day long? You've been stuck in this dreadful place for too long. Have you lost your mind? Keep it up, and I'll scatter you to the winds, reducing you to ashes. Despite the menacing appearance of the rune snake, John found it hard to be intimidated by such bickering. Each head of the rune snake harbored a distinct personality. The left head was the strategist, always plotting their next move. The middle head was the dreamer, lost in its own world of fantasies, and the right head was the critic, always ready with a harsh word for its siblings. This discord among the heads often led to their premature demise, with the right head frequently finding itself the target of the other two's aggression. John had not anticipated witnessing such internal strife, but the words of the right head piqued his interest. It was clear that there was no love lost among the heads, yet their mention of the copper snake suggested a familiarity with other magical creatures of their realm. As he stood there, contemplating his next move, John realized that understanding these creatures offered him an unexpected advantage. The dynamics between the three heads of the rune snake could potentially be the key to navigating the dangers of this enchanted forest. With this knowledge, John felt a renewed sense of purpose, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Chapter 524, Greetings, Rune Snake. As a Parseltongue, John found it challenging to assess the creature before him, uncertain if it should be considered as one entity or three. Would it be possible for you to direct me to the place deemed uninhabitable? He inquired, amidst the chaotic scene where the left and middle heads were aggressively colliding with the right head. John felt compelled to intervene in this self-inflicted skirmish. It became apparent that the rune snake's fangs had been removed, explaining its unusual size. Given the severe halitosis emanating from the right head, this wasn't its first experience of being on the receiving end of such violence. By the heavens, I'm restraining myself from retaliating, yet he comprehends our language, the right head exclaimed repeatedly. Upon hearing this, the middle head ceased its assault and declared, I am a lazy snake. The left head slithered down the tree, drawing closer to John. Hiss, are you capable of understanding us? It was clear that the left head was the dominant force. John nodded in response. The three snake heads encircled him, displaying a keen interest. The left head remarked, You are the first in many years to comprehend our speech. The middle head reiterated its previous statement, I am a lazy snake, while the right head implored, This is indeed a rarity. My neck is itching terribly. Please, attend to it promptly. After circling John, the left head proposed, You seek knowledge of that place? I can enlighten you, but you must first assist me with a task. What do you require? John inquired, intrigued by what the rune snake might need. The left head nudged the right, which was persistently requesting a scratch. I hunger. Bring me sufficient sustenance, and I shall reveal what you wish to know. John raised an eyebrow. Is that all? Indeed, confirmed the left head, coiled around the ancient tree. An elderly wizard confined us here, rendering us incapable of departure. He extracted our fangs to prevent us from inflicting harm upon one another. The middle head simply stated, I am a lazy snake, while the right head vociferously complained, Had it not been for that old man, I would have already disposed of the left. Unsurprisingly, the right head was subjected to another assault. John couldn't help but admire the wizard's ingenious method of neutralizing the threat posed by the three-headed snake. Agreeing to the request, John headed towards the river from which he had come, knowing it teemed with fish. With a flick of his wand, he fashioned a large fishing net from vines and submerged it into the river. After a short wait, the net was brimming with fish. Utilizing a levitation spell, he transported the net back to the ancient tree. Upon releasing the fish, the pungent aroma immediately halted the rune snake's quarrel. They eagerly devoured the fish, a feast they hadn't experienced in centuries. Remarkably, they had survived on a diet of leaves and fruit. As they consumed the fish, their fangs began to regenerate. Once the net was emptied, the snakes had fully regrown their teeth. The left head graciously thanked John, its newly formed fangs gleaming menacingly. Without warning, it turned on the right head, initiating a brutal attack. The middle head joined in, and together, they relentlessly assaulted the right head until it was severed, leaving a chilling scene in their wake. "I've been waiting for this moment," the left head confessed. "As promised, I shall guide you to the entrance. However, you'll need a snake's eye to perceive it." John, recalling the snake-eye gemstone in his bag, presented it. The left head, taken aback, advised, "You are indeed fortunate. Place the gemstone over your eye, and the way shall be revealed." As John followed the instructions, the rune snake moved aside, unveiling the hidden entrance, its secrets now accessible to him, thanks to the unexpected guidance of the rune snake. The creature lowered its body, its voice diminishing to a whisper. "Remember, do not attempt to touch those shores. They will curse you," warned Zuo Snake. Jong Snake added, "I am but a lazy snake." The rune snake succumbed to its injuries, its life ebbing away due to blood loss. John pondered, is this an act of cannibalism or one of liberation? These three beings had coexisted for centuries, yet none could bring themselves to kill the others. Years of mutual torment had failed to foster even a shred of affection among them. John carefully opened the middle head of the rune snake, and to his surprise, several pebble-sized eggs tumbled out. Unlike other creatures, rune snakes laid their eggs within their mouths. This particular rune snake, malnourished and unable to grow teeth, had consumed enough sustenance to lay its eggs, sacrificing its life in the process. John counted 6 eggs in total. Known for their ability to enhance brain function, these rune snake eggs were highly valuable on the black market. He carefully placed the eggs into a makeshift bag before extracting the venomous teeth from the right head. Among the 3 heads, only the right possessed potent venom, making it a sought-after ingredient. Following Zuo Snake's instructions, John placed the snake-eye gemstone into the eye socket of an ancient tree, previously obscured by vines. Miraculously, a hidden cavity appeared within the trunk. Approaching the tree, John laid the gemstone down and reached out, his hand passing through what appeared to be solid bark. Stepping through the trunk, he vanished from sight. Behind him, the rune snake's corpse turned to bones, a testament to the magic that had bound their spirits to that place. Emerging on the other side, John found himself in a vast desert. Setting down the snake-eye gemstone, the copper snake bracelet on his wrist sprang to life, burrowing into the sand. John followed its lead, traversing the endless dunes. After a considerable distance, the copper snake halted. Surveying his surroundings, John saw nothing but the desolate landscape, no sign of the pyramids. However, when he looked through the snake-eye gemstone, a black pyramid, guarded not by a sphinx but a basilisk with a human face, materialized before him. With a frown, John placed the soul lamp aside and drew his wand. "Specialist Revelio," he intoned, aiming at the pyramid. The basilisk stirred, contorting into the shape of an 8, as an entrance to the pyramid revealed itself, marked by an invisible door. John reached out, his fingers passing through the doorway. When his appearance charm elicited no response, he realized props are necessary. The brass snake sought it, and the snake-eye gemstone revealed it. The final piece of the puzzle was entry. John retrieved a damaged hourglass from his satchel, a relic likely ruined by poachers. Faced with the challenge of entering the pyramid, John was momentarily at a loss. "Fortunately, I am an alchemist," he mused. Gathering materials from his darkroom, John sat cross-legged and began his work. He melted and transformed the materials with a golden flame, intending to recreate the hourglass using underground crystals. Lacking the actual crystals, he opted to synthesize a substitute to harness the power of time. Extracting a soul from the soul lamp, John infused it into the hourglass, where it transformed into silvery white sand. With his wand in his left hand, John meticulously crafted a Mobius ring, engraving it onto the hourglass to amplify the power of time through the soul's continuous cycle. With a final clap of his hands, John successfully repaired the hourglass, ready to face the mysteries that lay within the pyramid. In the final step, the tail extended, deftly hooking onto the soul lamp. John, with the snake-eye gemstone firmly grasped in his right hand, flipped the hourglass with his left. As the sands of time cascaded down, the once illusory door began to morph, solidifying with each grain that fell. Using time as a key to unlock the door, This is the work of a wizard well versed in forbidden magic, John mused, his eyes widening with realization. This puzzle would have ensnared any ordinary wizard at the mere challenge of breaking the hourglass, but not him. Only someone equally skilled in the dark arts could hope to gain entry. Time and alchemy, he whispered, a spark of anticipation lighting up his gaze. I'm eager to discover what lies beyond. John was no ordinary wizard. He possessed the cunning of Slytherin and a spirit of adventure rivaling that of Gryffindor. Simple solutions held no appeal for him. It was the complex, the demanding challenges that truly ignited his passion. As the last grains of sand fell, the door, now fully materialized, seemed to beckon him forward. The statue of a serpent with a human face that stood guard outside the door shifted its gaze, its eyes roving as if to scrutinize the newcomer. John felt the weight of its stare and met its gaze boldly. For a moment, their eyes locked, and then the serpent's gaze slid away, feigning indifference. This silent exchange only heightened John's curiosity and determination. What secrets did this place hold? What challenges lay beyond the now tangible door? With a mixture of excitement and resolve, John stepped forward, ready to face whatever awaited him on the other side. Chapter 525, Greetings, Serpent. John stood before a door that served as the boundary between truth and illusion. The hourglass was the key to unlocking it, anchoring its existence to a specific moment in time. He understood that only a wizard of immense power could create such an artifact. A wizard as powerful as Dumbledore, he mused, considering the few names in history capable of such feats. Among them was Ambrosius, from whom John had learned much about time magic. Yet, this place seemed unlikely to be Ambrosius's creation. Despite being a Merlin, crossing oceans to settle here seemed out of character. The concept of Merlin was more of a magical constant. Wherever magic thrived, a Merlin was sure to be found. Which Merlin had crafted this, John could only speculate until he ventured further. The door before him was solid. When John reached out, his fingers met its surface without passing through. With a firm push, the door gradually opened, revealing a passage that seemed to lead into the pyramid at a specific point in time. A time anchor, a brilliant way to ensure visitors arrive at the intended moment, John thought, admiring the ingenuity. Stepping inside, he was greeted by a wall adorned with paintings that spanned various epochs. His gaze was drawn to the image of a wizard wearing a pharaoh's headdress and wielding a serpent staff. Placing the snake-eye gem in front of the depicted eye, the mural vanished, replaced by a stone door marked with numerous coiled snakes. John approached and pushed against the door, finding it locked. Drawing his wand, he cast the unlocking charm, Alohomora. Gears within the door whirred to life, and the painted snakes uncoiled, each biting its own tail to form Ouroboros symbols. As the sound ceased, the door slowly swung open, revealing a staircase so steep and narrow that only half a foot could fit on each step. Descending carefully, John kept the snake-eye jewel close. A soul lamp, attached to the tail of the jewel, illuminated his path through the tunnel. After nearly an hour, a light appeared ahead, signaling the end of the tunnel and the beginning of a long corridor. Above, the corridor twisted like a serpent's body, creating a space where up and down seemed indistinguishable. Setting the snake-eye gem aside, John found the ceiling returned to normal. This place blurs the line between illusion and reality, he observed, tapping the walls with his wand. They felt just like the interior of any ordinary pyramid. As he proceeded, paths and doors that were previously invisible now revealed themselves. Entering a room filled with artifacts of Egyptian culture, John surmised, to reach the true tomb, one must navigate between the realms of the real and the unreal. Intrigued by the challenge laid out by the unknown wizard, John smiled. If it's a game you want, then I shall play. He pocketed some golden beetles found among the tomb's treasures and once again looked through the snake-eye gem. The room transformed, revealing a perilous narrow bridge. Below, illuminated by the soul lamp, lay a bed of spikes. Setting the gem aside, John approached another door. Pushing it open, he was met with the pungent odor of ancient paint. Covering his nose, he peered through the gem once more, the scenery shifting again. Silently memorizing the layout, he continued this process, navigating closer to his goal with each step. John edged closer to the real room, navigating through the shifting illusions with caution. At times, he nearly lost his footing and tumbled out of the passage. When he finally placed the snake-eye gemstone down again, he found himself before a stone bridge leading to a peculiar stone house, supported by numerous columns and filled with countless treasures. Viewing the scene through the perspective of the snake, the bridge transformed into a long, smooth pipe, reminiscent of the sewers beneath Hogwarts. Could it be that some large creature is kept here? John pondered, recalling the familiar setting. He proceeded through the pipe and entered the columned stone house, where mountains of gold coins shimmered enticingly. However, John resisted the urge to approach them directly. Instead, he tapped his wand on the ground, activating a super sense spell that revealed the true nature of the room. The treasure was a trap, with countless mechanisms hidden behind it. The gold coins served as weights. Removing too many would trigger the traps. A warning inscribed next to the gold read, "Greedy people, you should learn to give up." John doubted many would heed such advice, given the lure of the vast wealth before them. Ignoring the gold, John moved to the center of the room, where the columns surrounded a hidden passage revealed by the snake-eye gemstone. The message next to the gold transformed, offering a choice: choose to face or escape. Without hesitation, John leaped into the passage, plummeting until he landed on what seemed like a cushion made from hundreds of layers of quilts, but was actually layers of huge snake sloughs. The ground was covered with them, making navigation difficult. Upon standing, John set down the snake-eye gemstone, and his feet turned into bones, shattered from presumably dropping the gemstone during his descent. He stepped over a skull and followed a path that, according to the gemstone, led to a dead end with a bottomless cliff. Across the cliff stood a statue, similar to the snake with a human face he had seen outside the pyramid. This statue, however, depicted an old man with a long beard and a purple hat, its wrinkles intricately carved. John navigated the true path, skillfully avoiding the traps that seemed to greet him menacingly. For a wizard of his caliber, disabling the mechanisms was straightforward. With a flick of his wand, he unleashed a white lightning light that triggered and destroyed all the traps, rendering the path safe. Passing under a guillotine, now harmless without its blade, John reached the cliff's other side. Picking up the snake-eye gemstone again, he examined the statue more closely. Behind it stood a giant hourglass, similar to the one he held, but in ruins, its sands of time long gone. Exploring further, John discovered the remains of a huge snake, now just a skeleton. It seemed this creature had once guarded the place, but had succumbed to the passage of time, leaving only its bones behind. Reflecting on the skeleton, John realized the significance of this guardian and the depth of the mysteries hidden within this ancient place. John gently stroked his chin, thoughtfully circling the massive bone structure before him. To be a basilisk, he mused, his gaze fixed on the remnants of the creature. This basilisk, by its size, suggested it might have lived even longer than the one hidden within the depths of Hogwarts. Yet, here it lay, ancient and lifeless. This led John to ponder the era of the being who once commanded such a creature. As far as I'm aware, aside from Salazar Slytherin, there's only one other wizard notorious for keeping basilisks, John whispered to himself, his eyes never leaving the skeletal remains. In the annals of dark magic, there was a name that stood out, a figure whose malevolence possibly surpassed even that of Extus. This individual wasn't just evil. He was the embodiment of darkness, having devised a spell considered the epitome of wickedness by all who knew of it, Horcruxes. The very concept of murdering to split one's soul for the sake of achieving a twisted form of immortality was abhorrent to John. To him, this wizard was Voldemort in a more sinister guise, possessing a strength so formidable that even Voldemort would have to tread carefully around him. This dark wizard, the oldest known of his kind, was infamous for breeding basilisks from toad eggs and for being the pioneer in the creation of Horcruxes. Up until John's era, the wizarding world remained uncertain of his demise. His legacy was a series of malevolent curses that continued to plague the wizarding community. These ruins were not remnants of the Egyptian pyramids. They were the vestiges of a wizard from ancient Greece, a figure who would easily claim the title of the most nefarious wizard in history. His era predated both the founders of Hogwarts and the legendary three brothers. Despicable Herpo, John uttered slowly, the name rolling off his tongue as he stared at the statue. Herpo the Foul, as he was known, nearly achieved a perverse form of immortality through his Horcruxes. If not for the destruction of these dark artifacts, his reign of terror might have continued indefinitely. Chapter 526. Greetings, Basilisk John declared. The hourglass must be activated now. With a flick of his tail, he hooked the soul lamp, from which a silver-white soul emerged. He infused it into the hourglass, causing the golden Mobius strip to shimmer with life. Carefully, John inverted the hourglass, and the scene around him began to transform dramatically. The ruins that surrounded him were replaced by the landscape of 1,000 years prior. Pieces of the snake statue that had fallen off were now reattaching themselves. The shattered hourglass mended itself piece by piece. As time passed, the hourglass was fully restored, and golden sand accumulated at its base. John observed the hourglass, now filled with the sands of time. With just one more turn, he could transport this ancient tomb, dormant for millennia, back to its original era. The area influenced by this large time-turner is sufficient to encompass this entire pyramid, John noted, circling the hourglass. He tapped the base lightly with his wand and commanded, "Invert." A spell gently tugged at the base, causing the massive hourglass to emit a prolonged creaking noise. The support in the middle struggled, but eventually flipped over. John watched intently as the hourglass took 10 minutes to complete its inversion, allowing golden sand to cascade from the top to the bottom. As the first grains of sand hit the bottom, a golden resonance emanated from the hourglass, its frequency swiftly enveloping the pyramid. Concurrently, the surroundings began to transform. The human-faced snake statue, its color faded from years of neglect, began to regain its vibrant hues. The uneven stones on the ground smoothed out, and the entire space was bathed in gold, radiating a bright, golden light. A deep rumbling emanated from the cliff's base, where a glint of gold appeared, followed by a gushing torrent of treasure. John watched in awe as the once rugged stones turned golden, and sand cascaded down like waterfalls, the sands of time. The pyramid underwent a complete transformation. In its tunnels, silhouettes flickered and darted, as if time itself was being rewound. "Play back at the rate of 1 year per second," John instructed, his expression grave. This was no small feat, an ambitious endeavor to reshape the entire pyramid. Unlike a conventional time-turner that transports individuals to a specific moment, this mechanism served as a time anchor, bringing the pyramid from a bygone era to the present. John couldn't help but admire such mastery over time magic. As the transformation continued, John realized the true antiquity of this place. It had existed for over 1,000 years. When the last shard of gold settled onto the dome in reverse, the pyramid, constructed from infinite treasure and the sands of time, was revealed in its full glory. The snake statue, now in an odd shape, seemed even more enigmatic. John, surrounded by an abundance of sands of time, realized that this place held far more than the Ministry of Magic ever could. The sands of time, amassing in large quantities, created a unique domain. Placing the snake-eye gem down, John noticed that the scene before him remained unchanged. This special field had the power to freeze time, allowing him to witness scenes from thousands of years ago without the need for the gem. The sands of time, flowing like a river in the air, pushed against each other. John tossed the damaged time-turner into this river of sand. When he retrieved it, it was filled with the sands of time, achieving his goal. Looking up at the human-faced snake, he approached it with a sense of curiosity. The snake, now more peculiar in its curved form, sparked an unusual thought in John's mind. "It's moving," he realized, just as the thought crossed his mind, and he heard a distinct sound of movement. A hissing sound emanated from behind the serpent, a sound that John understood all too well. "Hungry," he heard, just before a basilisk, far larger than the one in the Chamber of Secrets at Hogwarts, slowly emerged. This was a basilisk of 1,000 years, its size more than double that of its kin due to continuous shedding of its skin. Its massive body slithered across the ground, the hissing sound alone enough to instill fear. John, recalling the snakeskin he had stumbled upon earlier, realized it must have been shed by this very creature. This basilisk was ancient, surpassing even the one at Hogwarts in age. John surmised its demise was due to the depletion of food within the entire pyramid, having consumed all other creatures. The golden fragments found within the basilisk's bones likely resulted from it inadvertently consuming treasures. As the scent of food wafted through the air, the basilisk turned its head slowly towards John. Despite its sluggish movement, it didn't need speed to hunt. Its gaze alone was lethal. However, when its orange eyes met John's, the expected did not occur. Instead of falling dead, John stood unharmed, prompting the basilisk to express its confusion. "It's strange. Why is he all right?" it pondered aloud. The basilisk's massive form continued to emerge, its size even more intimidating up close, rightfully earning it the title of the King of Snakes. John, unfazed, met its gaze with his own eyes, now resembling those of a serpent, adding a chilling aura to his demeanor. "Hello, basilisk," he greeted, his voice adopting a cold, raspy tone akin to that of a snake. "Basilisk, tell me, who is your master?" With basilisk blood coursing through his veins, John was immune to the creature's deadly gaze. The basilisk, taken aback by the use of parseltongue, hesitated before asking, "Are you a descendant of the master?" It was clear that the basilisk's original master was also a parselmouth, a rare talent passed down through generations. "Great descendant of Hybo, the basilisk bows to you," it declared, lowering its massive head to the ground, its large orange eyes fixated on John. If John's assumptions were correct, this Hybo was none other than the infamous Herpo the Foul, though in the basilisk's eyes, his notoriety was twisted into greatness. John, without correcting the basilisk's assumption, inquired, "Tell me, where is Herpo's most precious treasure?" He saw an opportunity in the basilisk's allegiance, given its intimate knowledge of the pyramid and its secrets, having been Herpo's pet until its death. Follow the instructions of the great descendant of Herpo. The basilisk complied without question, its simple mind showing unwavering loyalty, or perhaps naivety, similar to that of Slytherin's basilisk, which had also obeyed only the commands of a parselmouth for over 1,000 years. Suppressing its hunger, the basilisk led the way, with John boldly following, despite the risk of being devoured. As they passed a statue of a serpent with a human face, John paused, sensing a subtle change in its posture. Casting Specialist Revelio with a flick of his wand, he saw no visible change in the statue and decided to move on, unaware that the statue's previously closed eyes had opened, now closely watching his departure. The basilisk eventually stopped at the base of a massive hourglass, where a hidden pothole was revealed, suggesting the entrance to yet another secret within the pyramid. The tunnel was a marvel of engineering, its walls so smoothly carved that the basilisk's massive head had easily burrowed into it. John, seizing the moment, grasped the creature's tail, allowing the momentum to carry him along. As the basilisk navigated swiftly through the labyrinthine pipes, John realized that this network must be part of Hyerbo's defensive system, designed to enable the basilisk to confront intruders. However, Hyerbo hadn't anticipated that John would use these very conduits to infiltrate his stronghold. After what felt like an eternity of winding through the underground maze, they emerged into a new area, a stark contrast to the grandeur of the statue they had left behind. This space was modest, seemingly a vault, but its contents were far from ordinary. The room, barely spacious enough to accommodate the basilisk and John, was crammed with various artifacts. At the heart of the room stood a study desk, upon which lay a book bound in black leather that immediately caught John's attention. It radiated a malevolent energy that was hard to ignore. Without laying a finger on it, John cautiously opened the book with a flick of his wand. The pages revealed a collection of sinister spells and curses, the work of Hyerbo, among which was the most dreadful of all, the method for creating a Horcrux. John couldn't help but sneer at Hyerbo's method of soul division, yet he couldn't deny the dark wizard's genius. He is unparalleled in the realms of time and soul manipulation, John thought to himself. Hyerbo, a wizard who thrived before 100 AD, possessed a level of wisdom and cunning that even Voldemort, in all his infamy, could not match. Hyerbo was a figure of immense intellect and power, an enhanced version of Voldemort in every conceivable way. Chapter 527. Greetings, Horcrux. John continued his exploration of the treasury, venturing next into the adjacent alchemy room. A musty odor permeated the air, emanating from a crucible that contained a potion, its age indeterminable, adhering to the bottom like a layer of sediment. Unable to identify the potion due to its long-standing neglect, John noted that while some materials had withstood the test of time, others crumbled to dust upon contact, their durability not as enduring as gold. His gaze fixed on a blood-stained table, evidence of numerous dissections of magical creatures. Among the remnants, he discovered a tooth, its distinctive shape indicating it belonged to a vampire. Helbo was experimenting with blood curses, John mused, recognizing a shared interest in their research directions. However, their purposes diverged. Helbo seemed intent on using blood curses for biological transformations. Reflecting on Helbo's journey from Greece to Egypt, John found the wizard's choices puzzling. Exiting the alchemy room, he encountered a basilisk, weakened from hunger and coiled in on itself. The treasury also housed a black book, a golden scale, a key-shaped golden scepter, and a mask. John's attention was drawn to the golden mask, an artifact typically buried with Egyptian pharaohs, adorned with gemstones and stained glass, its features distinct and fitting Helbo's thematic choices for the pyramid. These 4 items comprised the entirety of the treasury's contents. Upon handling the black book, John felt a sense of familiarity. As he turned a page with his wand, he was confronted with dark curses and a magical force tempting him to delve into its knowledge, reminiscent of Pandora's box, fraught with peril. "You're unaware that we're akin," John remarked with a smirk, addressing the book. "My spiritual prowess rivals yours, Helbo." Commanding the basilisk and Parseltongue to leave, John noted the soul within the black book was weaker than Voldemort's. This soul shard, akin to those in Voldemort's Horcruxes, had preserved the book from decay. Despite his attempt to destroy the book with a blasting curse, it remained unscathed, a testament to its formidable defenses even after a millennium, housing not only a piece of Helbo's soul, but also his life's wisdom. Securing the book with a series of spells, John reflected on Helbo's cunning strategy. Only a powerful wizard could access this room, yet the knowledge within the book was too tempting to forsake. Wondering about the number of Horcruxes Helbo might have created, John sprouted wings and ascended through the pipeline, leaving the treasury behind. Upon landing, John spared a glance at the basilisk, acknowledging its loyalty. Such creatures, with their longevity and fidelity, were favored guardians by the likes of Helbo and Slytherin. "It's time for your sustenance," John declared, retrieving a bottle of soul potion. John rummaged through his makeshift bag and retrieved a bottle. As he prepared to drink the soul potion in one swift gulp, he noticed something unsettling. The distance between him and a peculiarly curved snake seemed to have mysteriously shortened. "It seems closer," he muttered to himself, observing the snake with a human face that had now turned to face him directly. With the potion bottle poised at his lips, John caught the snake's body fully rotating to stare at him, motionless. Without hesitation, he consumed the soul potion, only for the snake, bearing an old human face, to materialize right before him. "Reducto!" he exclaimed, casting a spell that sent a burst of white light towards the snake's upper body. The formidable body of the snake began to disintegrate under the spell's impact, but in a mere moment, time seemed to reverse around the creature. Its body, previously collapsing, restored to its original state in the blink of an eye. The snake, now with eyes wide open, fixed its gaze upon John. "It seems this place harbors complexities beyond my understanding," John remarked, launching a continuous barrage of the shattering spell. The white light fragmented into 3, detonating across the snake's body, yet the creature swiftly recovered, its form no longer rigid but sinuous and alive. Its tail swept across the area, shattering a decorative lampstand. John realized there was no escape. The platform they were on was isolated, cut off from the past by a solidified field. Suddenly, a hissing sound emanated from the snake, invigorating the basilisk that had been lying dormant. The basilisk charged at John, its deadly fangs tearing through the ground with ease. "Stop, basilisk," John commanded in Parseltongue, halting the creature in its tracks. The snake hissed again, prompting the basilisk to resume its attack. "It appears another soul resides within it," John deduced, his expression turning grave. Unable to destroy the creature, he decided to contain it instead. With a flick of his wand, Golden treasures from the surroundings levitated and hurled towards the snake. Apungno. The snake responded by spewing flames from its mouth, melting the incoming gold into a liquid that cascaded towards John like a waterfall. Engulfed in the molten gold, John's clothes ignited, but he remained unharmed. As the snake continued its fiery assault, John found himself backed against a cliff. In that moment, a golden flame erupted around him. Emerging from the molten gold, John transformed into a golden fire dragon. He unleashed a torrent of golden flames from his mouth, clashing with the crimson flames of the snake. The intense heat generated between the two forces caused the ground beneath them to turn into magma. The dragon advanced, its golden flames overpowering the crimson, forcing the snake to retreat until its head was engulfed in an eternal flame, its body oscillating between melting and regenerating. Reverting to his human form, John cast the golden prison curse. The molten gold around them was manipulated to encase the snake, layer by layer, until it was trapped within a massive golden sphere. "A world of ice and snow," he whispered, his wand emitting a cold breath that rapidly froze the golden prison. The snake with a human face was now sealed within the icy sphere. John, his vision still recovering from the blinding flames, approached the frozen prison. Beneath his seemingly slender frame was a physique owned for battle. Placing his hand on the sphere, he cast a super sense spell to assess the condition inside. The gold, now solidified, had formed an impenetrable barrier around the snake, effectively imprisoning it. In the midst of chaos, the basilisk, poised to strike, hesitated upon hearing John's commanding voice. "Stop, basilisk." Conflicted, the creature was torn between its instincts and John's authoritative command. The skirmish had taken its toll, leaving the small bag John carried damaged and its contents, a golden mask, golden scales, and a golden scepter, scattered around. These items, once confining the dark powers within a black book, now lay inert on the ground. "Leave time magic on the snake, which is more advanced than Voldemort's methods," John mused, comparing the basilisk, now under the influence of Hirebow's enchantments, to Voldemort's Horcruxes. The basilisk, with its human face, seemed a more fitting subject for an alchemist's experiments. John's attention then turned to the soul potion, noticing 3 bottles in total, including the one he had previously consumed. With a snap of his fingers, he magically gathered the scattered items, and from them he crafted a new, simpler bag. He also conjured a robe for himself, preparing to address the aftermath of their encounter. Behind him, the large golden orb, which had solidified earlier, began to melt back into a liquid state. "Back in time," John murmured, his gaze fixed on the massive hourglass beyond the orb. The transformation of the orb seemed to be influenced by the hourglass. Suddenly, the orb burst, releasing the human-faced basilisk that darted towards the soul potion. With swift reflexes, John drew his wand, his eyes morphing into vertical slits, reminiscent of a snake's. He whispered an ancient incantation, "Return of the Soul." A powerful force emanated from his wand, halting the basilisk in its tracks just a breath away from the potion. Thick white smoke billowed from the creature, and within it, a figure was forcibly extracted. John had always excelled in dealing with Horcruxes, and this time was no exception. The basilisk, now devoid of the soul that had animated it, lost its vitality and crashed to the ground with a thunderous impact. John's gaze lingered on the extracted soul, his expression one of disdain. "Despicable Hirebow," he muttered, his voice laced with contempt for the dark alchemist who had dared to meddle with such dangerous magic. Chapter 528, Greetings to the Notorious Herpo. John found himself face to face with an elderly figure, a sight that would normally inspire respect for one's elders. However, the man before him was no ordinary senior. He was Herpo the Foul, ranked among the top 10 dark wizards in history, a position even the infamous Voldemort could only aspire to. Herpo's contributions to dark magic, including the creation of the first Horcrux and the breeding of a basilisk, were unparalleled. His innovations had paved the way for a form of immortality that no wizard before him had dared to dream of, albeit with dire consequences for his soul. Gazing upon Herpo's spectral form, which bore the marks of his dark experiments, John greeted him with a mix of irony and disdain. "Hello, infamous, despicable Herpo." "It's the great Herpo," the old wizard corrected, his appearance a curious mix of a traditional wizard's attire and ancient Egyptian garb, complete with a purple wizard hat and a long beard reminiscent of Dumbledore's. John couldn't help but retort, "My apologies, but in the history I've studied, your name has always been synonymous with villainy." As John spoke, he conjured 9 magical chains from his wand, binding Herpo's fragmented soul. "You constructed this pyramid to delve into the mysteries of time magic, seeking another path to eternal life, didn't you?" he observed. Herpo's soul, a ghastly figure with black hair, a prominent hooked nose, and sunken eyes, floated before him. The toll of splitting his soul was evident in his withered appearance, a state so advanced that without John's intervention with a soul potion, Herpo would have been powerless. "Your magic is impressive," Herpo acknowledged, adopting the tone of a superior. "We could strike a bargain, if you're interested." As a master of dark arts and alchemy, Herpo weighed his options carefully, proposing, "I can impart to you my extensive knowledge of magic in exchange for your assistance in my resurrection." Herpo's confidence stemmed from his belief that his offer would be irresistible to any ambitious young wizard. John was reminded of his first-year teacher, Quirrell, who had sought Voldemort's knowledge and ended up as his host. "Assist in your resurrection?" John queried, intrigued yet cautious. "Yes, I have made all the necessary preparations," Herpo claimed, believing he had piqued John's interest. He elaborated on the pyramid's location in a mining area plagued by temporal anomalies and his use of ancient Egyptian magic, which he believed held the key to his resurrection. John, recalling the artifacts he had discovered in the treasury, questioned, "After escaping death and resurrecting 1,000 years later, what is it that you truly seek?" Herpo, the pioneer of the Horcrux, had come to realize the limitations of his creation. "I seek freedom," he declared, his voice tinged with desperation. "True eternal life shouldn't be a prison." Revealing his torment, Herpo lamented the millennia of isolation and the death of his basilisk, criticizing the division of his soul for another's quest for immortality. "Is it just for me to be trapped here forever, a victim of the vile Herpo's ambition?" Herpo's anguish hinted at a deep-seated resentment towards his former self. A millennium of solitude had taken its toll, leaving his soul fragile and bitter. In a bid for liberation, Herpo offered John a deal, leveraging the secrets hidden within the pyramid. John faced Hirebo, whose visage quivered with a mix of desperation and cunning. "Help me, and I will grant you any desire, be it wealth or power. The great Hirebo can make it happen," he proclaimed, his voice trembling slightly with the weight of his offer. "Indeed, very tempting." John responded, his applause filled with a hint of sarcasm. He then posed a question that seemed to catch Hirebo off guard. "If you had everything prepared for your resurrection, why did you choose not to go through with it?" Hirebo's expression faltered as he considered the question. He realized his limitations and knew he couldn't overcome them in the time he had left, John mused, recalling his discovery of Hirebo's experiments with the blood curse. He recognized the folly of his reliance on Horcruxes and sought to refine the process, but death claimed him before he could succeed. John held up a black book, its cover worn by time. "The soul contained within this tome was separated later than yours, and its power is considerably weaker." He theorized that Hirebo, aware of his impending demise, constructed the pyramid as a means to achieve true immortality, placing his hopes in his Horcruxes. However, the continuous splitting of his soul only served to weaken it further, rendering the prospect of resurrection less appealing. Hirebo hoped his Horcruxes would find a solution to this dilemma, but the soul within the human-faced snake Horcrux harbored only resentment, failing to grasp his intentions. 2 Horcruxes, each with its own task, one to conquer the curse, the other to delve into the mysteries of time magic, John explained, his gaze fixed on the soul of the human-faced snake. "Sadly, you seem to have missed the point entirely." The revelation that his long-awaited resurrection was nothing more than a forsaken experiment was a bitter pill for Hirebo's soul to swallow, causing it to waver and nearly dissipate. "A fragmented soul cannot hope to achieve eternity," John remarked, pondering the inherent flaw in Hirebo's pursuit of immortality through soul division. Hirebo, incensed by what he perceived as a desecration of his life's work, retorted, "This is the pinnacle of magic. I have endured for 1,000 years. This is the essence of magic." Unmoved by Hirebo's outburst, John expressed a genuine interest in his magical knowledge. He casually placed the soul potion into his bag, his attention still on Hirebo's soul. "Your knowledge is intriguing, but your soul is what truly interests me," John said with a sly grin. Utilizing the flying charm, John summoned the soul lamp that had fallen off the cliff. The lamp, containing numerous souls, obediently flew into his grasp. Hirebo watched in disbelief, questioning how someone could manipulate souls with such ease. Was this not akin to creating a Horcrux, albeit one that housed the souls of others? "How about a change of scenery for you?" John suggested, his smile widening as Hirebo's soul was inexorably drawn towards the soul lamp. Hirebo's screams echoed, a chilling sound, yet John remained unaffected. "Make some room," John commanded, tapping the lamp. The souls within scattered, making way for Hirebo's soul, which was ensnared by a silver-white thread and pulled into the lamp. The faint blue flame inside flickered momentarily before settling down. "Hirebo's soul will prove to be quite valuable," John mused, contemplating the best use for this powerful soul. Despite Hirebo's malevolence, which rivaled even Voldemort's, John felt a twinge of dissatisfaction at his easy defeat. As Hirebo's soul was absorbed, the statue of the human-faced snake crumbled to dust and dispersed. Suddenly, a cracking sound caught John's attention, followed by a series of similar noises, signaling the beginning of something unforeseen. John's expression shifted dramatically as he looked up. A crack had formed on the surface of the immense hourglass, quickly spreading across its structure. With a resounding boom, the hourglass shattered, sending golden ripples cascading outward. The sand of time, previously held in delicate balance, now surged uncontrollably towards John, like a torrent breaking through a dam. Using the human-faced snake as the core, "Hirebo, you've really outdone yourself this time," John muttered under his breath, his face clouding over with frustration. He cursed silently, then spun on his heel and sprinted away. The basilisk, caught off guard, remained motionless, seemingly at a loss. Glancing back, John quickly devised a plan. "Leave the pyramid," he commanded the basilisk. "Obeying, great descendant of Hirebo," the basilisk responded. It slithered into the passage beneath where the hourglass once stood, and John seized the moment to latch onto the creature's body, pressing himself against it. As the basilisk navigated the passage, the relentless sands of time transformed everything in its wake into a maelstrom of chaotic time and space. The serpentine path momentarily slowed the advance of the sands of time, and the basilisk, intimately familiar with the labyrinthine corridors, adeptly chose the correct turns just before the sands could engulf them. Meanwhile, the exterior of the pyramid began to show signs of deterioration, with pieces of its structure starting to crumble away. In this harrowing escape, John's quick thinking and the basilisk's intimate knowledge of the pyramid's passages were their only hope against the relentless onslaught of time turned hostile. Chapter 529. Hello, Collapsed Pyramid. The pyramids were collapsing rapidly, and the sands of time were in hot pursuit. John, riding the basilisk, navigated swiftly through the labyrinth of passages. He soon reached an exit on the upper level, where cracks began to spiderweb across the surrounding pillars. Suddenly, the sands of time burst forth, coalescing into a massive face. "Leave my possessions alone," boomed a voice, a magical remnant of Hirebo. Wherever the sands of time flowed, space became chaotic, with figures flickering in and out of existence. The sands of time, intent on engulfing John, seemed to swallow everything in their path. Unexpectedly, the passage ahead vanished, and the basilisk plummeted. John quickly drew his wand, and with a burst of magic, the basilisk reappeared in its previous location. "Apparition is completely disrupted," John muttered, drawing a Mobius loop in the air. The encroaching sands of time were momentarily forced back to their original position. Sweat beaded on John's forehead as he urged the basilisk, "Keep heading for the exit." The basilisk veered into another direction, but the Mobius ring's glow intensified before shattering. A deluge of sands of time surged towards John, and the path ahead collapsed, blocking their way. John's wand emitted a brilliant light, transforming into an electric arc that shattered the obstacles before them. "Upwards," he commanded. The basilisk surged into another tunnel, swimming against the current. John pressed himself flat against the basilisk's back to reduce resistance. As they ascended, the sands of time's advance seemed to slow. However, seeing that they were still being pursued, John unleashed a shattering curse, momentarily suspending himself in a temporal quagmire. Time is truly a mystery, John mused, opting for a different tactic. He caused the tunnel to collapse behind them, momentarily halting the advance of the sands of time. But in an instant, the damaged tunnel miraculously restored itself. Breaking free from the passage, the basilisk entered a tunnel above. Sensing imminent danger, it increased its speed. At the corridor's edge, John witnessed the massive face formed by the sands of time engulf the tunnel behind them, a moving disaster. "Hellbow, your extravagance knows no bounds," John remarked, envious of the vast quantity of sands of time. Amidst the temporal chaos, a winged demon emerged, likely a magical creature caught in the turmoil. As it flew towards John, he thought, through thick and thin. An invisible blade dispatched the approaching winged demon. John noticed several shattered containers in the corridor, from which reanimated creatures emerged to assail him. His Death Eye spell caused an approaching poison-horned beast to collapse. Nearing the pyramid's apex, John couldn't help but think, this might lead to a dead end. The basilisk's tail brushed against the sands of time, causing its flesh to rapidly decay. Starved since its appearance, the basilisk soon turned to bones. John leapt onto its skull, sprouting wings from his back to accelerate away. The sands of time quickened their pace in response. The pyramids continued to collapse around them, presenting a scene of apocalyptic destruction. John burst into a tomb and drew a Mobius ring to seal the entrance. Planting his wand into the ground, he invoked Eternal Land. Golden light radiated from the ground, reinforcing the Mobius ring's barrier. Trapped, John had no escape as the sands of time encircled the tomb. The erosive power of time rapidly weathered the surrounding structures. With a thunderous crash, the tomb's passage collapsed, sending John plummeting. As he fell through the pyramid's base, the sands of time followed closely. After breaking through a dozen corridors, the impact forced John to cough up blood, his wand still firmly in hand. With a swift motion, John cast a levitation spell, halting the rapidly descending tomb in its tracks. In the blink of an eye, he found himself enveloped by the swirling sands of time, which began to seep in to every crevice around him. "It's either you or me now," John muttered grimly, his determination hardening. He knew the stakes were high as he prepared to use the soul lamp, an artifact he had hoped to save for a more dire situation. John positioned his left hand on his wand while his right hand cradled the soul lamp. His eyes transformed, adopting vertical pupils as dark tendrils emerged from his hand, intertwining with the lamp. He summoned souls one after another, drawing them into the lamp. Then, without hesitation, he consumed a bottle of soul potion, its contents flowing down his throat. Clapping his hands together, he transformed a rune snake egg into liquid and swallowed it, feeling his mental acuity and magical power surge. The strain was evident on his basewood wand, which began to show cracks under the immense magical force. Time, soul, immense magical power, and the soul-eating curse, John whispered to himself. He lifted the soul lamp and withdrew his wand. Without the protection of the Mobius ring, the tomb succumbed to the relentless assault of the sands of time. As the wind and sand cleared, John stood exposed, surrounded by the perilous sands. Without a moment's hesitation, he hurled the soul lamp into the heart of the swirling sands. The lamp's faint blue flame erupted, unleashing a howl that belonged to High Erbo. John pointed his wand at the lamp, channeling his magical power into a torrent of purple lightning that struck the lamp, causing it to crack and release a vast wave of soul power, creating a protective field around him. John's growl deepened as he amplified his magical output, the sands of time, the soul lamp, and his magic power colliding in a tumultuous vortex. He raised his right hand, and a dark curse enveloped the converging forces, creating a vacuum that transformed into a black hole, devouring everything in its path, including the massive pyramid. As the sands of time invaded his body, John endured excruciating pain. The sands infiltrated his arm, spreading throughout his body, turning his liver golden. He experienced visions of battles from different eras, including conflicts involving muggles, wizards, and aurors at Hogwarts. He witnessed a dark shroud over Paris and a colossal explosion, followed by a blue fire dragon soaring into the sky. "Stop!" John commanded, halting the flood of visions. He pushed his magical power to its limits, unlocking his own constraints and converting his emotions into pure magic. The purple lightning intensified, striking the soul lamp with increased ferocity, causing the cracks to widen. Hyerbo's soul screamed in terror, unable to comprehend John's reckless fusion of magic power and soul with time. As the sands of time coalesced into a golden mountain, the soul lamp shattered, releasing the soul extracted from the Dementor. Hyerbo struggled to breathe as the conflicting forces obliterated the soul's consciousness. The sands of time transformed into a radiant golden light, merging with 4 other colors in front of John, signaling the culmination of his daring and desperate gambit. Black and purple hues swirled around John, a testament to the imbalance of magic within him. Without the magic crystal, my powers cannot achieve the equilibrium necessary to withstand the collision of the 4 elements, he lamented. As he spoke, the skin on his arm began to peel away, revealing the raw flesh beneath. This gruesome process repeated itself, with flesh regenerating only to be stripped away once more. Yet John transformed his agony into strength, channeling his emotions to amplify his magic. His wand, strained under the pressure, developed cracks that glowed with a sinister red light. In a desperate move, John bit into a rune snake egg, knowing well the risks it carried. The unrefined egg contained hallucinogenic toxins potent enough to induce sleep. However, as the fluid from the shattered egg seeped into his stomach, his mind achieved an unparalleled clarity, and the space around him began to warp. "Give it to me," he bellowed, his voice laced with the anger. Suspended in midair, he unleashed his magic with full force, shattering the soul lamp. The 4 elemental forces within him found a fleeting balance, their collision generating a powerful force capable of time travel. Engulfed by this force, John vanished into thin air. The residual energy contracted rapidly, condensing into a speck of light no larger than a chick. Where a pyramid once stood, now only a copper snake remained. Time passed, and with a single movement, the snake disrupted the delicate balance of power. The speck of light expanded explosively, unleashing a destructive force that burst forth, ravaging the ancient trees and consuming everything in its vicinity. A vast, smooth crater now marred the Egyptian landscape, and the architect of this chaos was nowhere to be found. Far from Godric's Hollow, Gale had put considerable distance between himself and that fateful land. He had found employment in a wand shop, where the owner quickly grew fond of his new apprentice. "Well done, Gellert. You might just have the talent to become a master wand maker, though it will certainly take time," praised Mr. Gregorovitch. "Thank you for your kind words, Mr. Gregorovitch. A friend of mine is a wand maker, and I've learned much by observing him," Gellert Grindelwald replied, maintaining a charming smile that never seemed to wear out its welcome. His gaze, however, was fixed on a cabinet where Gregorovitch stored his prized collection. Among the wands, one stood out to him. "Joel, it seems I've found the Elder Wand before you," he mused, a glint of ambition flickering in his eyes. Chapter 530. Hello, Newt. Time seemed to flicker erratically, the space around John constantly shifting in a chaotic dance. One moment, a serene plain flashed before his eyes. The next, he found himself amidst a raging battlefield. Then, as quickly as it appeared, an airplane soared overhead, dropping a bomb in his direction. But before the bomb could reach him, John vanished once more. Thick smoke billowed from his wand as he continued to channel his purple magic power, the darkness in his eyes deepening with each leap through time and space. He had jumped 100 times in short succession, pushing himself to the brink. "If I keep this up, I'll be drained of life," John realized, desperation creeping into his thoughts. With a forceful grip, he squeezed his wand, already teetering on the edge of collapse. In that moment, the pent-up magic power erupted into a massive explosion, obliterating his soul and erasing time itself. Catapulted out of the tumultuous void, John reappeared in midair. Wings sprouted from his back, and he frantically adjusted his body to stabilize his descent. Despite his efforts, the ground rushed up to meet him, and in a last-ditch effort to soften the impact, he transformed into a dragon. His massive body crashed into the earth, sending shockwaves through the surrounding area. The commotion caught the attention of a nearby camp. It was a ring of wizards involved in the illegal poaching of fantastic beasts. They were in the midst of bargaining when the sudden noise startled them. "What happened?" exclaimed a wizard with a thick beard, standing up in alarm. "Sounds like something fell," another called out, as a young man with freckles on his face cautiously approached the tent. Seizing the moment of confusion, he stealthily opened the tent flap. Inside, he found a majestic thunderbird, its feathers dulled and spirit broken, chained and caged, barely clinging to life. This magical creature, capable of controlling storms and native to Arizona, USA, had been captured and brought all the way to Egypt. The young man, a magizoologist who had stumbled upon the poacher's operation, whispered reassuringly to the Thunderbird, "I'm here to save you." He deftly unlocked the cage with a flick of his ash wand and the incantation Alohomora. Ignoring the need for further stealth, he quickly freed the Thunderbird from its chains and coaxed it into his box, which contained food the bird favored. As the poachers returned, they found the cage empty, their prize gone. Meanwhile, the young man, now revealed to be Newt Scamander, made his escape, avoiding the use of apparition to prevent alerting the poachers. Unfortunately, his cautious movements were eventually spotted, and the poachers gave chase. Newt dodged their spells, one of which struck his box, though it remained intact. He continued to flee, drawing ever closer to the site of John's dramatic landing. After a series of narrow escapes and another apparition, he finally shook off his pursuers. Catching his breath, Newt decided to inspect the box for damage. "Dougal, please be good," he murmured to the creature inside as he secured the lock once more. The chase had been exhilarating, but it was time to ensure his magical creatures were safe. Unbeknownst to him, his path was about to cross with John's, setting the stage for an unexpected alliance. Realizing that no one was pursuing him, the young man paused for a moment before proceeding. He was met with a scene of devastation. "It looks like there was some kind of attack here," he observed, taken aback by the extent of the damage. Moving forward, he encountered a large pothole. The ground around it bore the marks of something or someone having fallen. Peering into the abyss, he was met with the sight of a black dragon, its massive body sprawled out below. "It seems to be injured," the young man mused aloud. "If I leave it here, those poaching groups won't hesitate to target such a magnificent creature." Taking a deep breath, he acknowledged the inherent danger in dealing with dragons, creatures far more perilous than the likes of thunderbirds or fire dragons. Yet, faced with the plight of the injured dragon, the young man couldn't simply stand by and watch it fall into the hands of poachers. "All right, big guy, you've put me in a tough spot," he said, demonstrating remarkable patience in the face of a fantastic beast. Employing a levitation spell, he managed to hoist the dragon into the air, though it required considerable effort to coax the creature into a box. This was no ordinary box, but one enhanced with an advanced undetectable extension charm, serving as a sanctuary for endangered magical creatures. With the dragon safely inside, the young man departed from the scene. John awoke with a start, his landing having been particularly rough this time. Dazed, he rubbed his head, noticing the metallic sheen of his dragon claws. A moment of confusion passed before he remembered transforming into his dragon form prior to the fall. The combined effects of a time flash explosion and the toxin from a rune snake egg had rendered him unconscious for an extended period, despite his fire dragon constitution. As he regained his bearings, John attempted to ascertain how long he had been unconscious and where he was. Judging by his last memories, he suspected he was still in Egypt. Discovering traces of a substance on his body, he was taken aback. Who would dare to approach a fire dragon, let alone administer some potion, he wondered, sniffing at the residue. Baishan, this must be the work of a wizard. Suddenly, a creature resembling a rhinoceros with a poisonous horn dashed past him. Recalling his encounters in the pyramid with a unicorn affected by temporal and spatial anomalies, John looked up just in time to see a thunderbird soar overhead. Then, mooncalves emerged to bask in the moonlight, their light gray, slippery bodies supported by slender legs and flat feet. The buzzing of a six-winged billywig caught his attention next, its sting known to cause dizziness and levitation in its victims. Below, murtlaps scurried by, their backs covered in sea anemone-like growths. John's surroundings were teeming with magical creatures, snidgets, serpents, horned camels, and even the distant chatter of what might be a rune spore. Is this some kind of ecological park modeled after the textbook? He pondered. These creatures were all featured in the Hogwarts-approved textbook on magical zoology, fantastic beasts and where to find them, leading John to wonder if he had stumbled upon a park inspired by the book. Where in the world am I, he mused. The variety of magical creatures suggested he was either in a circus tent or the home of an eccentric magazoologist. As John moved, he startled a group of mooncalves into scurrying towards a cave, heedless of the moonlight. His massive 80-foot frame dwarfed even the Thunderbird. My tongue is still numb, John remarked with a hint of annoyance. Eating raw rune snake eggs can lead to hallucinations, fainting, and tongue paralysis. He considered documenting his experience, half-jokingly thinking it could be worth publishing. In a future era, poised on the brink of reverting to human form, John was roused from his slumber by a voice tinged with astonishment. The newcomer, a young man with brown curly hair, gray-blue eyes, and a smattering of light freckles across his cheeks, entered the room. His eyes widened in surprise as he took in the sight before him. Dressed in a brown vest layered over a crisp white shirt, he approached John cautiously, mindful of the potential danger. An 80-foot dragon in a rage could wreak untold havoc. John watched, speechless, as the young man scratched his head in a perplexed manner before striking a pose, mimicking the wings of a fire dragon with his arms. Is he treating me as if I were a wild fire dragon? John thought, caught between amusement and bewilderment. He hadn't anticipated being regarded as a magical creature. After observing the young man's antics with a mix of interest and amusement, John finally spoke. Aren't you tired? A bit, the young man replied automatically. Then, realizing who had spoken, he turned to John with eyes wide in shock. He stared at John, astonishment written all over his face, and exclaimed, You can talk? Of course, John replied, his voice slightly muffled due to the numbness in his tongue. As he lowered his head, the dark green scales shimmering like steel under the light, the young man caught a glimpse of the dragon's expressive brown eyes. Thank you for saving me, John managed to say, despite the awkwardness of his speech. You're welcome. I'm sorry, The young man stumbled over his words, the revelation that the dragon could speak overturning his understanding of the world. Struggling to find the right words, he finally introduced himself. Hi, my name is Newt Scamander. Hello, Newt, John greeted him, a new chapter of their unexpected friendship beginning to unfold. Chapter 531, 1926, Illegal Entry and More. Newt Scamander? John gazed at the young man before him with a mixture of curiosity and disbelief. If his memory served him correctly, this was the name of the author behind Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, a book that wouldn't see its first publication until 1927. After a brief pause, John ventured, Has your book been published yet? Book? Newt responded with a hint of suspicion. How did you know I'm working on a book? It hasn't been officially published yet. I aim to introduce the wizarding world to magical creatures. So, it hasn't been published yet. That means it's currently before 1927, John deduced, taking a moment to process this information. He took a deep breath, trying to calm the whirlwind of thoughts in his mind. It appeared that his attempt at time travel, the Time Flash, had both succeeded and failed. He had indeed traveled to the future, but only by a little over 2 decades. His intended destination, the world he knew, was still 70 years away. John felt a headache coming on. Despite the success of the Time Flash in facilitating time travel, it hadn't delivered him to his desired time. I must seize the next opportunity, he muttered to himself. Time travel was unpredictable, and finding a way back to his own era would require more than just luck. He needed something more reliable, like an anchor point, similar to the infamous Hellbow. Looking up at Newt, John couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. In his own time, Newt Scamander was revered as the most authoritative magizoologist, an elderly figure whose work had inspired generations. If Hagrid knew whom he was in the presence of, he would be ecstatic. Hagrid's passion for magical creatures was well known, and the opportunity to meet Newt would be a dream come true for him. Where am I? John surveyed his surroundings, imagining Hagrid's reaction to being in such a place. He would likely volunteer to be Newt's half-giant protector for life. so enamored he would be with the setting straight out of Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. A niffler suddenly clambered onto John, attracted by the gleam of his scales. Oh, this is my case. I'm on my way to America," Newt explained, still adjusting to the idea of conversing with a dragon. "I'm transporting Frank to Arizona." As Newt elaborated, John, momentarily taken aback by the mention of traveling from Egypt to America, realized he had overslept. Frank the Thunderbird, whom Newt had rescued alongside John, was nearly healed thanks to Newt's care. However, John had only just awakened from his extended slumber. They were aboard a ship, and after a brief conversation, Newt excused himself to disembark. Donning his peacock blue coat, he climbed the ladder and departed. John, now alone, gently captured the niffler that had approached him. The creature looked up at him with wide, pitiful eyes. In the next moment, John began to transform. His massive 80-foot dragon form gradually shrank back into his human shape, much to the niffler's shock, causing it to drop a gold necklace it had pocketed. Holding the niffler in one hand and his wand in the other, John noted the convenience of his clothing transforming along with him, sparing his newly made pouch from destruction. His basswood wand, however, was in dire condition. Covered in cracks and more damaged than Ron's wand had ever been, it was barely holding together. Glancing around at the magical creatures in Newt's case, John couldn't help but smile. To a magizoologist, these creatures were a treasure trove of valuable materials. Turning his attention back to the niffler, now trembling with fear, John decided not to trouble the creature further. Setting it down, he focused on the Thunderbird. Having once wielded a wand made from a Thunderbird feather, John felt a sense of nostalgia and determination. If he could craft another, he would welcome the opportunity. Meanwhile, it was a sunny day in New York. Seagulls soared above as a large passenger ship made its way past the Statue of Liberty, drawing the attention of tourists on board. Seated on a bench, Newt appeared lost in thought, perhaps contemplating his next steps in this bustling city. Wearing his old blue overcoat, he placed the suitcase on his lap and whispered in a low voice, "Dougal, calm down. Take care of that big fellow. He's injured." His voice was soft, almost like a murmur, carrying an odd sense of urgency. From within the box, a whine of protest emerged. "That giant dragon? You expect me to take care of it as an invisible creature? I couldn't even manage to feed him properly." Soon, the ship docked, and amidst the bustling crowd, Newt's commander stepped off the gangway. The United States Customs were conducting thorough checks on everyone's passports. Newt, too, presented his well-worn passport, his brow furrowed as he faced the customs officer. "British?" the officer inquired, comparing the photo in the passport to Newt's face. Newt, feeling socially awkward, avoided the officer's gaze. "Yes," he replied. "First time in New York?" the officer asked further. "Yes," Newt responded, his eyes still darting away, as if that was the only phrase he knew. The customs officer, growing suspicious, eyed Newt's suitcase. "Is there any food in there?" he asked. Newt, feeling increasingly uncomfortable, placed his hands in his coat pockets. "No," he answered. "What about livestock?" The officer's suspicion seemed to deepen. Newt attempted to appear casual, but just then his suitcase made a noise. The lock, which had been faulty since a spell had hit it, snapped open. Newt quickly secured it again and said awkwardly, "I've got to fix that case." No." The customs officer, now clearly suspicious, insisted, "Let me have a look." Left with no choice, Newt placed the suitcase on the table, but discreetly turned the brass dial to Muggle mode. Upon opening the case, the officer found only simple pajamas, various maps, and a quiet Hufflepuff scarf. Finding nothing of concern, he handed back the suitcase with the routine greeting, "Welcome to New York." "Thank you," Newt said, taking his belongings. John approached the Thunderbird, a majestic creature that Newt had rescued from magical animal traders. The Thunderbird, naturally wary of strangers, tensed up. John extended his hand, employing mind magic soothingly. "Don't worry, I won't hurt you. I just need a feather." His gaze lingered on the Thunderbird's tail feathers, and perhaps sensing a kinship in their shared affinity for lightning, the Thunderbird gradually relaxed. John gently stroked the Thunderbird's feathers, asking, "May I have one of your tail feathers, please?" His use of mind magic calmed the creature, which then led John to its resting area, where several shed feathers lay. John picked up two and affectionately patted the Thunderbird on the head. As he wandered through the magical menagerie, John marveled, "This place is truly magical, a testament to exceptional space magic." He pondered whether Newt had crafted this space himself or acquired it, considering the complexity of the enchantments required to maintain such a diverse ecosystem within a seemingly boundless valley. Upon encountering a bowtruckle, John noted its cautious demeanor and its remarkable lock-picking skill, which made it highly sought after in the black market. Despite its vigilance, John simply shrugged and moved on, his curiosity undimmed. He then observed a family of horned camels, a species on the brink of extinction that Newt had managed to breed successfully. The sight filled John with a sense of admiration for Newt's dedication to magical creatures. Continuing his exploration, John suddenly sensed a familiar presence. Intrigued, he followed the sensation, finding himself near the habitat of the mooncalves, next to which lay a breath of cold air wafted out from behind the curtain that separated the mysterious space from the rest of the world. John moved closer, curiosity guiding his steps, and what he saw took his breath away. Before him lay a field blanketed in snow and ice, a silent world where no magical creatures roamed, except for one. A mass of darkness, swirling and shifting like bubbles, stood out against the white expanse. "Silence," John whispered as he stepped inside. Black mist seemed to emanate from his eyes, reminiscent of the way it might before touching Moran. A poor being, lost to obscurity after death. Obscurity wasn't a creature of magic in the traditional sense. It was more akin to an emotionally charged, dark force. It preyed on young wizards who couldn't control their power, transforming them into silent shadows of themselves when overwhelmed by intense emotions. This was the fate of Ariana, and John knew it all too well. He himself was a silent shadow, perhaps the only one who had mastered control over this daunting power. Great power comes with great troubles, a fair exchange, he mused. Standing before the mass of darkness, John's eyes flickered with a complex mix of emotions. He slowly extended his hand towards the silent force, but before making contact, he withdrew. There was a decision to be made, and for now, he chose to step back. "I need to make myself a wand first." While it was true that spells could be cast without a wand, the convenience and precision it offered were unmatched. As he reached into his small bag for a bottle of soul potion, a black book tumbled out alongside it. John picked it up, giving it a cursory glance. "You are a disaster that has spanned thousands of years," he remarked, a hint of awe in his voice. After consuming the soul potion, John felt his vision and strength returning almost instantly. The journey ahead was fraught with challenges, but with a new wand in hand and the knowledge contained within the ancient book, John was ready to face them head-on. The silent force, a testament to his unique power and burden, would no longer be a shadow following him, but a strength to be harnessed. Chapter 532, Encounter in New York. Upon arriving in New York, Newt Scamander was filled with a childlike curiosity, reminiscent of a wide-eyed visitor exploring a new world. His attention was immediately captured by a scene unfolding on the steps of the city bank, where a woman dressed in Puritan attire passionately advocated for the cause of Second Salem, a group vehemently opposed to wizards and magic. The backdrop to her fervent speech was a man holding a flag emblazoned with the group's emblem, a wand snapped in half amidst flames of yellow and red. Oblivious to the irony, Newt, a wizard himself, was drawn to the spectacle, his eyes reflecting a mixture of fascination and naivety. His attention, however, was abruptly diverted when he collided with a tall woman who was more engrossed in her hot dog than the rally. Apologizing without a second thought, Newt barely registered the woman's indifferent glance before his attention was reclaimed by the rally. Amidst this distraction, a portly man, Jacob Kowalski, excused himself as he navigated past the tall woman, intent on entering the bank. In a twist of fate, Jacob stumbled over Newt's misplaced suitcase. Newt, ever the gentleman, quickly assisted Jacob, who, despite the unfortunate introduction, accepted Newt's apology with grace. The rally speaker, seizing the moment of commotion, directly addressed Newt, inquiring about his presence. Caught off guard and mistaken for a potential supporter, Newt awkwardly attempted to deflect, claiming he was merely passing by. The conversation took a peculiar turn when Newt, misunderstanding the question, identified himself as more of a chaser than a seeker of truth. Meanwhile, a well-dressed man exited the bank, his indifference to the surrounding spectacle evident as he casually tossed a coin to a beggar. The coin's journey was momentarily illuminated by the sunlight, creating a fleeting moment of beauty before it clattered against the steps. Unbeknownst to Newt, his suitcase had become the source of a minor escape attempt. A niffler, ever the treasure hunter, had managed to free itself, prompting Newt to chase after it into the bank, where he would once again cross paths with Jacob. Inside the magical suitcase, a different story unfolded. John marveled at the meticulous organization of Newt's collection, a testament to his dedication to magical creatures. The suitcase, a microcosm of Newt's world, was divided into various habitats, each home to a unique species. John's exploration led him to a confrontation with bowtruckles, who were less than pleased with his intrusion. Yet his presence commanded respect, even among these creatures. His interest was particularly piqued by the eggs of the bird snakes, valued for their purity and magical properties. As John ventured further, he encountered an invisible beast, its presence betrayed only by the subtlest of signs. Despite its initial apprehension, the creature seemed to recognize a kindred spirit in John, who admired its fine hair texture with a familiarity that belied his outsider status. John's foray into Newt's world was not merely one of curiosity, but of appreciation for the magical and the mundane. His discovery of oak sap, used by magical creatures for nesting, underscored the interconnectedness of all beings in this hidden world. As the chapter closes, the encounter between Newt and Jacob in the bank looms, promising a convergence of paths that could only occur in a city as vibrant and unpredictable as New York. John wasn't surprised at all by the materials he found. They were complete, allowing him to borrow Newt's workshop to craft the wand. As he was meticulously stripping the upper bark from a birch branch, ensuring it retained its full toughness, he noticed a small, sneaky presence. "If you dare to touch my things, I'll eat you in one bite," John warned without looking up, catching a glimpse of golden scales peeking out near his bag. His tone was flat, dismissive. "You wouldn't even make a decent snack for me." The creature, Shishu, recoiled at John's words, its small hands withdrawing and tears welling up in its eyes. John, having taken conservation of magizoology as an elective, recognized the creature's antics and remained indifferent. Shishu, realizing its attempt at looking pitiful wouldn't work, reluctantly backed off. Just as it was about to leave, it sensed something, a call, irresistible to its nature. It climbed up a ladder and, using its ability to squeeze through the tiniest of openings, slipped out through a gap in a closed box. Meanwhile, John was focused on his wand making, embedding a thunderbird feather into the core of the birch wood, oblivious to Shishu's antics. Birchwood, often tended by bowtruckles and enriched with magical energy, makes for an excellent wand material, he mused, summoning oak sap to coat the wand evenly. The presence of magical creatures expedited the curing process of the birch wood. He found a well-lit spot to hang the sap-coated wand, noting, "It'll be ready in a few hours." Utilizing filament worms for lighting was an unexpected boon. John admired the sun, bulbs housing filament worms, above him, contemplating the possibility of crafting a similar environment. These magical creatures need to be tamed first, he thought, appreciating the convenience of Newt's box, which served both as a portable office and an ecological park. Returning to a rocky area designed for fire dragons, John sat cross-legged, observing a poison horn in the distance, displaying signs of mating. The environment was bustling with magical life, including a thunderbird flying nearby. Back in Newt's case, Shishu, the little thief, was scolded and thrown back by an angry Newt, warning it for the last time against taking things that weren't its own. Despite the reprimand, Shishu seemed determined to venture out again. John, still recovering from a recent shock, decided to rest behind the rocks, closing his eyes for a nap. Meanwhile, a commotion unfolded at the city bank, with Newt at the center of it, searching for his niffler, a creature known for its penchant for shiny objects, capable of robbing a bank on its own. Newt was trying to calm Jacob, a World War I veteran caught up in the chaos, who was understandably confused about how he went from being inside a bank vault to standing outside the bank in an instant. The police arrived quickly, but failed to notice Newt and Jacob hiding in an alley, except for a tall woman who seemed aware of their presence. As Newt prepared to erase Jacob's memory, since he was a muggle who had witnessed magic, the situation grew tense, highlighting the delicate balance between the magical and non-magical worlds. Jacob, in a swift motion, grabbed the box lying on the ground to defend himself. Newt, taken aback by the sudden action, was inadvertently struck by the box. Faced with an unfamiliar adversary, Jacob decided against remaining passive. With a muttered apology, he took a frantic step back and dashed out of the room. Newt attempted to follow, but was quickly hindered by a group of people outside, allowing Jacob to disappear into the crowd. The day's events left Jacob feeling bewildered as he made his way back to his modest home. Once inside, he sank into a chair, overwhelmed by a sense of relief. Meanwhile, Newt found himself in a precarious situation. He was apprehended by a tall woman, an agent of the United States Ministry of Magic. Newt had inadvertently broken a law, and as a result was taken into custody and brought before the Magical Congress. Back in the safety of his home, Jacob tried to collect his thoughts. After a moment of calm, he noticed the box on his bed making a clicking sound. With a mix of curiosity and caution, he turned his attention towards it. The box, which had begun to shake, eventually stilled. Jacob approached it warily, and as he got closer, something unexpectedly leaped out, landing in his arms. In his struggle to maintain his grip, it felt as though the ceiling would cave in under the force. Moments later, the walls of his room seemed to burst outward, leaving him in a state of shock and confusion. This series of events not only introduced Jacob to a world beyond his imagination, but also set the stage for an adventure intertwined with magic, mystery, and unexpected alliances. As he navigated this new reality, Jacob would find that his life was forever changed by the contents of that mysterious box and the chaotic world it belonged to. Chapter 533. Hello, Goldstein. When John awoke, he found himself slightly disoriented. Did I just take a nap, and now this place is in ruins? He wondered aloud. The curtain that had divided the area was torn apart, and as John surveyed the now empty space next door, he fell into deep thought. Approaching the spot where he had left his wand to dry, he was met with nothing but empty air. The realization that his wand had been stolen while he was momentarily distracted hit him hard. Taking a deep breath to steady himself, John's feelings were a mix of frustration and determination to uncover what had transpired. From the looks of it, there doesn't seem to have been any human involvement, John mused, examining the scene. Besides the escaped poison horn beast, several other magical creatures had broken free. With the door still ajar, it was clear that these creatures could wander out as they pleased. John's attention was quickly drawn to the venomous leopard, a creature so dangerous that even a seasoned magizoologist like Newt Scamander would handle it with extreme caution. As the leopard prepared to leap and escape, John commanded, "Go back!" His voice carried the authority of a dragon, and the leopard, sensing the dragon's might, hesitated, its poison sac visibly swelling in intimidation. John knew the havoc this creature could wreak if it escaped. It was capable of causing fatal diseases with just its breath, akin to a walking biochemical weapon. After a tense standoff, the leopard reluctantly retreated. John's presence exuded an aura that left the other magical creatures cowering in submission. "Just stay put," he ordered, his voice echoing the dominance of a dragon's hierarchy. Determined to get to the bottom of the situation, John headed towards the exit, pondering, could some reckless wizard have knocked Newt out and stolen the box? Meanwhile, Jacob was slumped against a cabinet near a house that had suffered significant damage, causing a stir among the bystanders. Theories abounded, with some speculating a gas explosion, a theory that was momentarily supported by a drunken vagrant who exclaimed, "It's not gas! Hey, officer, I saw it! That's a huge hippopotamus! Gas! It's gas!" His quick retraction, influenced by Newt's discreet use of a confusion charm, redirected the crowd's speculation back to a gas explosion. Newt, seizing the moment of distraction, hurried up the metal stairs to the room with the exploded wall. The box that had caused so much chaos lay innocently on the bed, its lid slowly beginning to open. John, ever the opportunist, peeked out from inside the box, surveying the damage and the unconscious Jacob with confusion. Newt, your house has been burglarized. Did you know? John thought, though Newt was nowhere to be seen. Upon closer inspection of Jacob, who had a bite mark on his neck, John deduced, this looks like the work of a motra rat. But why does this man look familiar? Before he could ponder further, footsteps approached, prompting John to retreat back into the box. Moments after he closed the lid, Newt entered the room. His gaze immediately fell on the damaged wall and then on Jacob, whom he quickly tended to with a restorative charm, healing his injuries and repairing the wall. Sitting on the bed, Newt hastily checked the box, finding John already back in his place. With a quick glance, he closed the box, just as the female official, having noticed Newt's absence, rushed upstairs. "Is the box open?" she inquired. "It was just a small slit," Newt replied with a polite smile, concealing the chaos that had briefly unfolded. The truth of the matter, known only to him, was far more complex than the official could have imagined. Tina breathed a sigh of relief upon hearing the news, but couldn't help but complain. "That mischievous Niffler has escaped again?" She was aware of the Niffler's antics in the bank vault, and had initially dismissed it as a minor issue. Perhaps," Newt admitted guiltily. Indeed, the Niffler had escaped, and it wasn't alone in its escapade. "Then we must find it immediately," Tina insisted, her patience thinning with the troublesome creature. It was then that she noticed Jacob, a no-mage, lying on the ground with a bleeding neck. "He's injured," she observed, puzzled, as Nifflers weren't known to bite. As Tina called out to Jacob with concern, a Mortella rat suddenly leaped out, causing her to scream in fright. The rat clung to her arm, but Newt swiftly caught it by the tail and secured it back in the box. He reassured Tina, who was visibly shaken, that it was just a Mortella rat. Meanwhile, Jacob slowly regained consciousness, only to find himself face to face with Newt, the man who had inadvertently involved him in a bank robbery. "It's you," Jacob exclaimed. "Hello," Newt greeted him with a friendly smile, then attempted to erase Jacob's memory with his wand. Tina, however, objected. With Jacob injured, he needed to remain conscious to serve as a witness. Newt, frustrated, remarked, "Who was it that kept insisting I use the obliviate charm sooner?" Despite Newt's assurance that the Mortella rat's bite wasn't severe, Jacob's condition seemed to worsen, as he began to retch in a corner. Tina gave Newt a skeptical look, questioning his assessment of the situation. Ultimately, Tina decided to take both men to her home for observation, asking Newt to assist the ailing Jacob. The trio then departed, their forms changing as they left. Meanwhile, John, who had been left with the box of magical creatures, mused that it was time for Newt to repair the lock. Leaning against the ladder, he overheard the conversations outside and doubted Newt's Gryffindor affiliation, given his current predicament. John also realized his wand was missing, likely taken by one of the magical creatures. Resigned to wait for Newt's return, he lamented the lack of food in his temporary confinement. Upon arriving at Tina Goldstein's home, Newt and Jacob were introduced to her world. Tina, an employee of the Wand Application Management Office at the Magical Congress of America, lived with her younger sister, Queenie, a kind-hearted and beautiful blonde who worked for the same organization. Queenie, unlike her sister, was a natural legilimens, capable of reading minds, an ability that often proved to be a double-edged sword. Jacob was immediately smitten with Queenie, who had limited interactions with nomads. As dinner commenced, the atmosphere grew warmer, with two hearts beginning to draw closer. The evening was filled with awkward conversations and shared glances, especially between Tina and Newt. After dinner, Jacob, holding a cup of hot cocoa provided by Tina, remarked to Newt, "Hey, Scamander, look, it's hot cocoa." Newt, wrapped in a quilt and seemingly distant, did not respond, prompting Tina to set down the cocoa and address the situation directly. As soon as the door closed behind them, Newt sprang to life with the vigor of someone miraculously cured from a grave illness. He swiftly got up, approached the mysterious box, and stepped inside with an urgency that left Jacob gaping in disbelief. It wasn't until Newt had fully disappeared into the box, extending a hand from within to beckon Jacob, that the reality of the situation began to dawn on him. Jacob's mind raced with confusion, his eyes wide and breath shallow as he struggled to comprehend what he was witnessing. "Come here," Newt's voice echoed from the depths of the box, pulling Jacob from his stupor. Despite his skepticism, Jacob's curiosity got the better of him. With a deep breath to muster his courage, he reluctantly set his cup aside, climbed out of bed, and approached the enigmatic box. The entrance seemed too small for his frame, causing him to fumble awkwardly as he attempted to squeeze himself inside. The box shook violently with his efforts, eliciting a despairing cry from Jacob. "No way," he lamented. Yet, with one determined push, he vanished into the box with a sudden whoosh, the lid snapping shut behind him. Jacob's descent felt like tumbling through a chaotic void, his surroundings a blur of motion as he knocked over bottles and utensils in his fall. When he finally came to a stop, he found himself in a room transformed. The cramped space was now a cozy chamber filled with camp beds, tropical clothing, and an assortment of tools hanging on the walls. Unfamiliar potted plants dotted the area, alongside a medicine cabinet stocked with an array of pills, tablets, and various bottles. A dried animal carcass dangled ominously from a hook, adding to the room's eccentric charm. Newt, who had already made himself comfortable inside, cast a glance at Jacob and gestured for him to take a seat. The bewildering journey into the box had transported them into a world far removed from the ordinary, a hidden sanctuary that defied all logic and expectation. Chapter 534. Hello, Jacob. Newt Scamander carefully examined Jacob's wound, and, upon recognizing it as a bite from a motra rat, promptly plucked a few leaves from a nearby plant. He crushed them into a paste and gently applied it to the wound. Then, he retrieved a few pills from a medicine bottle and handed them to Jacob. Initially, Jacob eyed the medicine with suspicion, but considering his current predicament, he decided he had nothing to lose and swallowed the pill, feeling a wave of relief wash over him. He watched as Newt moved to take some meat from a shelf, placing it on a cutting board to chop it into large pieces. Newt explained that he was preparing to check on the lost magical creatures and feed them. He invited Jacob to come along, sensing that Jacob was a good-hearted person. Indeed, as they encountered various magical beings, Jacob didn't react with disgust, but with wonder and amazement. Meanwhile, in the wilderness area nearby, a thunderbird caused a heavy downpour. John, transformed into a dragon, leaned against a rock, squinting at a newspaper. Grindelwald, he muttered, his eyes scanning the familiar name. It seems the future remains unchanged. Grindelwald is still stirring revolution in Europe. He had considered altering the memories of 3 individuals, but Grindelwald's escape made it unnecessary. Noticing the Thunderbird's descent, John mused, "Newt is back?" He admired Newt Scamander's ability to handle an obscurus, a feat he found impressive. The obscurus Newt contained is weak, likely due to the host's death, he thought, pondering the implications. Back in Newt's care, Jacob was feeding mooncalves. The adorable creatures convinced him this wasn't a dream. His imagination could never conjure such wonders. "Eat up, cuties," he cooed, thoroughly enjoying the moment. Suddenly, a chilling shout pierced the air. "Did you hear that?" Jacob asked, turning to Newt, but Newt had vanished. The curtains between the areas fluttered open, revealing a snowy landscape. Drawn in, Jacob approached a mass of black matter emitting turbulent energy. As he reached out to touch it, Newt's urgent voice stopped him. "Back off," Newt commanded sharply, causing Jacob to startle. "What is this thing?" Jacob asked, a mix of curiosity and fear in his voice. "It's an obscurus," Newt replied, his tone heavy with a mix of concern and sorrow. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Newt quickly changed the subject. "We need to retrieve the escaped creatures before they're harmed." Jacob, still processing everything, followed Newt through various landscapes, each more fantastical than the last. They eventually arrived at a rock-covered area, where Newt pointed out the most dangerous creature hadn't escaped. Jacob, catching his breath, looked on in shock at the sight before him. "What is this?" he asked, awe-stricken. "Dragon," Newt answered, standing beneath the majestic creature, a sense of calm assurance in his voice. This chapter reveals the magical world through Jacob's eyes, showcasing his transition from skepticism to wonder. Newt's expertise and compassion for magical creatures are highlighted, as is the looming threat of Grindelwald's actions. The interactions between characters and magical beings underscore the themes of curiosity, fear, and the unknown. The darkness seemed to consume everything around it, a vast expanse of black that was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. Newt Scamander, who had previously encountered fire dragons on the Eastern Front, found himself facing a creature that defied all his prior knowledge. Its immense size was unparalleled, and its intelligence was evident, leaving Newt and his companion, Jacob Kowalski, feeling minuscule in comparison. "Hey!" Newt called out, waving his hands to catch the dragon's attention. The ground trembled slightly as the black dragon, named John, acknowledged his call and sat up, its movements causing Jacob to hold his breath in fear. "Are you sure it won't eat us?" Jacob whispered, his voice barely audible. "Probably not," Newt replied softly, before announcing himself to the dragon. "It's me, Newt Scamander." "Of course I remember you, Newt," John responded with a chuckle, looking down at them. "It hasn't been long since we last met." This reassured Newt that they were not in immediate danger, while Jacob was astounded by the fact that the dragon could speak. John's gaze fell upon Jacob, who was visibly shaken. "And you, sir? What's your name?" John inquired with a curious buzz in his voice. "Me?" Jacob pointed to himself, swallowing hard before nervously responding. "My name is Jacob Kowalski." "Kowalski?" John repeated, recognizing the name. "Hello, Jacob." "Hello, sir," Jacob replied instinctively, as if addressing a high-ranking officer. "You don't need to call me Mister," John said casually, playing with a stone. "Just call me Shadow of World Extinction." Jacob couldn't help but feel uneasy about the name. Shadow of the Extinct World? Have you seen any animals running out?" Newt asked, concerned about the creatures missing from his magical case. John pondered for a moment before answering. "A few tried to escape, but I stopped them. However, a venomous horned beast in heat, an invisible creature, and another restless one managed to get away. I'm sorry, I was asleep when it happened." Jacob was taken aback by John's demeanor, which seemed more akin to a refined British gentleman than a fearsome black dragon. Newt expressed his gratitude. "Thank you for your help, Shadow of World Extinction." Despite the unusual name, John's actions had indeed prevented further chaos. Newt then turned to Jacob, seeking his local knowledge to locate the escaped creature. "In your opinion, where would a medium-sized creature that enjoys open plains, trees, and puddles likely go?" Newt inquired. "In New York?" Jacob clarified. "Yes," Newt confirmed. After a moment of thought, Jacob's face lit up with realization. Central Park." Newt appreciated Jacob's insight. "Where exactly is that place?" Jacob, amused by Newt's unfamiliarity with New York, offered to guide him. "I'd love to take you there, but isn't that a bit deceitful?" he joked, referring to their current situation. Newt explained the potential consequences of their adventure, including the use of the Oblivion Charm, which would erase Jacob's memories of their magical encounters. "What is the Oblivion Charm?" Jacob asked, puzzled. "It's like waking up from a vivid dream, with all memories of magic fading away," John interjected from above, finding their conversation intriguing. Jacob looked around, bewildered by the surreal world he found himself in. "I won't remember any of this?" "That's correct," Newt confirmed, his honesty striking a chord with Jacob. "Okay, no problem. I'll just help you," Jacob said, his tone shifting to determination. Newt picked up the bucket for feeding the horned camels, turned around, and prepared to continue their quest, with Jacob by his side, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead in their magical adventure. Jacob was about to leave when John's voice halted him in his tracks. "Hey, Jacob," he called out, a certain depth in his tone. "I like you too," John confessed, his words carrying a weight of sincerity as he leaned back against the rock, his gaze fixed on Jacob. "If you ever need help, you can count on me." "Thank you, Mr. Me, Mr. Shadow of Mishi," Jacob replied, his attempt at pronouncing the name still awkward. With a quick nod of gratitude, he hurried away, leaving John behind. John watched him go, a smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "This little guy is truly one of a kind," he mused to himself, his eyes twinkling with amusement. If he were a wizard, he'd definitely be in Gryffindor. He couldn't help but draw parallels between Jacob and his father, both embodying the brave and noble spirit of Gryffindors. With a final wave in the direction Jacob had gone, John settled back, his thoughts lingering on the brief encounter. Chapter 535, Greetings, Skater. In the heart of Central Park, a vast frozen pond served as a playground for numerous children gliding on its icy surface. Skating, with its inherent risk of slipping, led to a minor mishap when a boy fell. Another skater quickly came to his aid. It was during this moment of camaraderie that an unexpected glow emanated from beneath the ice, capturing the fallen child's gaze with a mixture of surprise and awe. Before their arrival at Central Park, Newt Scamander and Jacob Kowalski walked side by side, engaging in light conversation while Newt carried his enchanted suitcase. They passed by shop windows glittering with exquisite jewelry, yet neither man paid much attention to the displays, lost in their exchange about Jacob's employment at a canning factory and his unsuccessful attempt to secure a loan for a bakery. Through their dialogue, Newt discovered that Jacob, like his own brother, had served in the First World War. Jacob, in turn, was fascinated to learn of Newt's encounters with dragons on the Eastern Front, particularly a fire dragon of unprecedented size. "That was the largest fire dragon I've ever encountered, and its species remains a mystery to me," Newt remarked, a hint of frustration in his voice. As their conversation deepened, the bond between them grew stronger, akin to that of friends. Suddenly, Newt halted, his attention caught by a shimmering earring resting on a car hood. Further investigation revealed a trail of diamonds scattered on the sidewalk, leading to a jewelry store window. Exchanging a knowing look with Jacob, Newt cautiously approached the window, only to recoil in surprise. Peering inside, he spotted a niffler, its arm adorned with diamond necklaces as it attempted to blend in with the store's displays. The illusion was shattered when the necklace slipped from the niffler's grasp, clattering to the floor. Newt's astonishment was palpable as the niffler, sensing his gaze, made a hasty retreat. Without hesitation, Newt drew his wand, shattering the window to pursue the creature, leaving Jacob dumbfounded and anxiously scanning their surroundings. He wanted to caution Newt about the legality of his actions, but the chaos inside the store, marked by falling chandeliers and scattered jewels, left him speechless. The niffler's agility saw it navigating the store's interior with ease until a misstep caused a display case to topple, crashing through another window. Back at Newt's suitcase, a tense standoff unfolded between a venomous leopard and another formidable creature. The air was thick with the threat of violence, deterring any other magical beasts from intervening. The leopard, fixated on its opponent, emitted a menacing growl, only to be silenced by a powerful command. The confrontation escalated until the leopard, overwhelmed by an unseen force, succumbed to petrification and collapsed. Outside, the chaos continued as Jacob, acting on impulse, secured Newt's suitcase. The sudden movement caused the already damaged window to give way completely, spilling them onto the street. The niffler, seizing the opportunity, made a swift escape. "All fly!" Newt exclaimed, casting a spell to retrieve the niffler and the scattered jewels. In a daring maneuver, the niffler latched onto a street lamp, swung around, and launched itself towards another window, narrowly evading capture. This time, Newt was determined not to let the creature escape. With a swift spell, he transformed the glass into a jelly-like substance, effectively trapping the niffler. Breathing heavily, Newt managed to say, "Okay, are you happy now?" The niffler had left the place in disarray, and the sound of sirens filled the air. A police car sped past, its brakes screeching as it came to a halt. A policeman, gun in hand, stepped out of the vehicle. "They're heading that way," Jacob said, attempting to divert the policeman's attention. The officer gave them a skeptical look, clearly not buying the story from two men adorned with stolen jewelry. Just then, a lion appeared at the street's entrance. Newt glanced over, quickly stuffed the niffler into his coat, and remarked with a grin, "You know, New York is really something else, far more interesting than I anticipated." While the policeman's attention was diverted, Newt grabbed the case, took hold of Jacob's hand, and the two of them apparated away. When the policeman turned back, they were gone. To evade the police, they hurried to Central Park, still needing to capture two more fantastic beasts. As they crossed a bridge, they narrowly avoided a charging ostrich. A distant rumbling sound prompted Newt to hand Jacob a Quidditch keeper's helmet. "Put this on," he instructed. "Why do I need to wear this?" Jacob asked, puzzled. Newt replied with a grim tone, "Because your skull could easily be cracked open by a strong enough blow." Shivering, Jacob donned the helmet. The deeper they ventured into Central Park, the more evident it became that magical creatures were indeed present. The zoo was in disarray, with half of its animals missing and damage visible on the exterior walls. The entrance was blocked by debris. The lion they had seen earlier must have escaped from here. Suddenly, a deafening roar filled the air, prompting Newt to take out another protective suit and hand it to Jacob. "Here, put this on too," he said. Clearly, they were dealing with a venomous horned beast in heat, a creature whose mere scratch could be lethal to a no-mage like Jacob. Despite the danger, Jacob was willing to proceed. They spotted the beast cornering a terrified hippopotamus. "With this, you have absolutely nothing to worry about," Newt assured him. "Tell me, who would believe that coming from you?" Jacob retorted, eyeing the massive creature and then his own considerably smaller frame, skeptical of the protective gear's effectiveness. Newt simply shrugged. "My philosophy is that worrying just means you suffer twice." It was a logical point, but Jacob found himself at a loss for words. The venomous horned beast, resembling a bulky rhinoceros, was aggressively courting a hippopotamus 1/5 its size, which was paralyzed with fear. This was a female poison horn beast in heat. Newt prepared for his plan, taking out a bottle of poison horn musk. After applying a small amount of the potent liquid to his hands, he was ready to begin his peculiar courtship dance, designed to mimic the poison horn beast. The dance was so bizarre that Jacob could hardly bear to watch. However, it proved effective, and the beast abandoned the hippopotamus, rolling over to Newt, who was imitating its movements. The creature tumbled into Newt's arms, just a short distance from the open case. Meanwhile, Jacob, holding the musk, didn't notice a seal behind him, playfully tossing a fish into the air. The fish struck Jacob, causing the musk bottle to shatter and douse him with the scent. As the wind shifted, the poison horn beast, initially headed for the box, turned its attention to Jacob. Compared to Newt's slender frame, Jacob's more robust figure seemed to better match the beast's preferences. Jacob turned to see the seal that had caused the mishap scampering away. Facing the poison horn beast once more, he realized the imminent danger. Newt, too, sensed trouble. As the beast charged towards Jacob, his instincts, honed on the battlefield, kicked in. Reacting swiftly, he turned and screamed, dashing in the opposite direction. Newt scrambled to follow, witnessing the two figures darting onto a frozen pond. However, the poison-horned beast's massive size was too much for the ice to bear, causing it to crack beneath its weight. As Newt reached for his wand, a mischievous baboon appeared out of nowhere, snatching it away. Retrieving his wand became his immediate priority. Meanwhile, Jacob found himself in a precarious situation, hanging from a tree branch above. Below him, the estrus poison-horned beast cavorted clumsily on its back, its legs flailing in an attempt to entice a mate. Jacob, unable to descend, watched as the beast regained its footing, charged at the tree, and impaled it with its horn. The tree's trunk sizzled and burst open from the heat of the beast's scorching secretion, sending Jacob tumbling down a steep slope and onto the icy lake below. The poison-horned beast, relentless in its pursuit, followed. Jacob scrambled to his feet, desperately trying to escape across the lake. The beast, however, struggled with the slippery ice, giving Newt the chance to catch up after retrieving his wand. Unfortunately, Newt's footing failed him as well, and he found himself repeatedly slipping on the ice. Determined, he apparated to the lake's edge and opened his chest, hoping to contain the beast. The poison-horned beast, still in pursuit of Jacob, slipped and thrashed about, inadvertently flinging Newt aside with a flick of its tail. The chest flew from Newt's grasp, sliding across the ice far out of reach. Meanwhile, the beast continued its relentless chase after Jacob. Jacob stumbled and let out a scream, narrowly avoiding a deadly blow from the poison-horned beast. The situation was dire, with Newt separated from his wand and the chest, and Jacob in imminent danger. Chapter 536. Hello, Big Claw. Damn it, Newt muttered under his breath as he scrambled for his wand. The ice beneath his feet was so slippery that his movements resembled an awkward tap dance in his leather shoes. It seemed as though his end was near. Just then, a terrifying presence emanated from the box beside him. The poison-horned beast, in the throes of its mating season, was suddenly overwhelmed by fear. Despite its attempts to stop, the beast continued to slide uncontrollably on the ice. "Run!" Newt managed to yell, finally grasping his wand. Jacob, too, realized the peril they were in due to the treacherous ice. Just as the beast was about to reach them, a giant claw covered in black scales emerged from the box, seizing the poison-horned beast with a formidable grip. The beast trembled under the dragon's claw, a palpable aura of terror surrounding it. In the next moment, the poison-horned beast was dragged into the box. With a swift apparition, Newt closed the box, leaving Jacob and himself to catch their breath after the harrowing encounter. "Nice job, Mr. Kowalski," Newt praised, admiring Jacob's bravery. Jacob extended a hand in friendship. "Call me Jacob," he said. Newt shook his hand warmly. Jacob then knocked on the box, expressing his gratitude. "Thank you, Mr. Big Claw." Newt smiled, sharing a knowing look with Jacob. The two exchanged smiles and carefully made their way across the frozen lake. Meanwhile, on the bridge, Tina peeked out, spying on the duo. From her perspective, Newt was a criminal harboring a crate of dangerous magical creatures, blatantly causing chaos and flouting the Ministry of Magic's regulations. "Okay, 2 caught, 1 left," she muttered to herself. As Newt and Jacob approached the bridge, Newt opened the box to check on the magical creatures. "Jump in," he urged Jacob, unaware that Tina was secretly observing them. After Newt entered, the box closed automatically. Tina quickly emerged from behind a pillar, hurried over to the box, and locked it. Her face was a mix of terror and determination as she confirmed their imprisonment. Inside the box, Jacob was oblivious to their predicament, but Newt immediately realized the situation. "Oh no," he exclaimed, looking towards the entrance. "What?" Jacob asked, still confused. "Are we trapped?" Newt asked, concern evident in his voice. "Trapped? You mean we're locked up?" Jacob finally understood the gravity of their situation. Newt then turned his attention to the poison-horned beast that had been forcibly captured. He and Jacob found John examining the creature. "Is it okay?" Newt inquired. John, engrossed in a black book filled with magical knowledge, pointed towards the area where the poison-horned beast lay, seemingly unharmed but visibly shaken. Relieved, Newt expressed his gratitude to John, addressing him as Shadow of Destruction. John casually acknowledged the thanks as he continued to peruse the book. Suddenly, Jacob called out to Newt, concerned about another creature, the venomous leopard, which lay motionless. "What's wrong with it?" Jacob asked, worry lacing his voice. "It seems to be in shock," Newt observed, approaching the creature. "If not for the faint breathing, one might have mistaken it for dead. Could it be under a petrification spell?" he pondered aloud, puzzled by the absence of any other wizards in the vicinity. Determined to remedy the situation, Newt returned to his hut to prepare a concoction. He meticulously selected plants and crushed them into a green soup. "Help me lift its head, but be careful of the poisonous thorns on its neck." "Use these," he instructed, tossing a pair of dragonhide gloves to Jacob. With the gloves on, Jacob carefully lifted the leopard's head, allowing Newt to administer the green soup. John, meanwhile, continued to flip through the black book, a compilation of Hirebo's life's wisdom, seeking answers to their current predicament. Inside, the contents remained invaluable, even after nearly 2 millennia. Among the pages, John discovered discussions on some unpublished curses, including detailed notes on the bloodborne curse. The book went beyond the well-known Horcruxes, delving into other dark arts. It revealed that in his later years, Hirebo shifted his focus, seeking alternatives to the burdensome immortality granted by a fragmented soul. He explored ancient blood curses, like those afflicting vampires and werewolves, theorizing that by transferring such curses onto himself and then removing them, he could achieve a transformed body with everlasting vitality. This concept aimed at preserving youth without the emotional decay associated with the Philosopher's Stone or the damage of a shattered soul. It was an ingenious yet mad pursuit. Hirebo, in his obsession, captured numerous vampires and werewolves, conducting dissections and experiments on victims of blood curses. He meticulously recorded his findings in what he dubbed the Dark God Book. His research was on the brink of a breakthrough when his life was abruptly cut short. John, absorbed in the section about the blood curse, learned that Hirebo had monitored the curse's progression from human to serpent, concluding that it operated at the soul level. However, Hirebo struggled to develop a safe method for soul manipulation, a procedure fraught with risks for both the subject and the practitioner. In his attempts, John would fortify the patient's soul with soul medicine to ensure the curse could be removed without erasing the individual's essence. Hirebo's era lacked the means for purifying a soul, a task for which only a few, like the Dementors, were suited, leading him to abandon this line of inquiry. "It's my gain," John mused, recognizing the book's value. With 2 blood curses to address and a werewolf to consider, the knowledge within could prove transformative. Hirebow's expertise in dark magic, coupled with his defensive prowess, made him a formidable figure whose legacy endured. John was wary of the book's seductive power, a characteristic of its Horcrux nature, designed to corrupt its possessor gradually. Yet upon its first attempt, the book found John impervious to its influence, its efforts to sway him futile. Exploring further, John encountered sections on time and soul magic, including a potent time spell used by Hirebow on a serpent. This ultimate healing magic didn't merely repair, but reversed damage by returning the subject to its pre-injured state, a feat limited to physical forms, as the soul remained beyond time's restorative reach. John experimented with a time corridor spell, manifesting an Ouroboros mark on his hand. He demonstrated its effect by healing a scale torn from his skin, which seamlessly returned to its place, leaving no trace of injury. He cautioned against its careless use, aware of the potential for irreversible harm. Closing the Dark God book, John turned his attention to Newt, ready to apply the ancient wisdom contained within to confront the challenges ahead. His journey into the depths of dark magic was not just a quest for power, but a search for solutions to the curses that plagued those around him. After successfully treating the petrified poison leopard, it roared warily in John's direction before swiftly retreating to its territory. Newt, puzzled by the leopard's reaction, turned to John with a question on his lips. However, before he could voice his curiosity, a sound from the box diverted his attention. Adjusting his clothes, Newt made his way to the exit. Jacob, having thoroughly enjoyed his time with the magical creatures, waved goodbye to John. "Farewell, shadow of the extinct world," he called out. John returned the gesture, saying, "Good luck, Mr. Kowalski." Jacob paused, slightly confused by John's parting words. However, he would soon grasp their significance. New York was engulfed in chaos that day. Inside the hall of the Magical Congress, a large turntable indicated the threat level of magical exposure. The needle on the dial swung from severe to urgent. Since Grindelwald's resurgence, the wizarding world's adherence to the secrecy law had been under threat, risking the exposure of wizards to the non-magical world. Yet, the situation had never escalated to the current level of urgency. Chapter 537. Hello, Auror. This night was destined to be anything but peaceful. An unknown assailant, under the watchful eyes of many, burst into the city hall and attacked a no-Mage senator who was widely expected to run for president. Senator Shao was killed instantly, and the poster behind him was shredded to pieces. This incident, witnessed by numerous high-profile individuals, significantly heightened the risk of exposing the magical community to the non-magical world. Tina, carrying a suitcase that concealed Newt and Jacob, hurried up the hall steps. She was too preoccupied with her own turmoil to notice the clusters of wizards and witches huddled together, whispering anxiously among themselves. Her emotions were in turmoil. Ever since she had been reassigned from the Auror department for casting a spell on a no-Mage, she had been desperate to prove her worth and return to her former position. This incident was a disaster for someone as career-driven as Tina. Meanwhile, at the Pentagon, wizards from around the globe were engaged in a heated debate. "Our American friends have allowed the National Secrets Act to be violated," one remarked, highlighting the gravity of the situation. "This threatens to expose us all," another added, the tension in the room palpable and occasionally confrontational. "The person who let Gellert Grindelwald escape is hardly in a position to lecture me," a voice cut through the tension, underscoring the seriousness of the breach. It was in this charged atmosphere that Tina, determined to atone for her past mistakes with a significant deed, made her entrance. She had not anticipated that her arrival would coincide with a global discussion on the recent attack, drawing everyone's attention, including that of her immediate superior, Serafina Pickery, the president of the Magical Congress of America. A distinguished alumna of the Ilvermorny School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, Pickery had been chosen by the statue of the Horned Serpent, a symbol of wisdom, and had ascended the political ladder to her current position. She was a figure of excellence and authority, and her irritation was palpable as she addressed Tina's intrusion. "You'd better have a good reason for this, Miss Goldstein," she stated, her tone commanding respect. Realizing her impulsive action, Tina gathered her courage. "Yes, I do," she replied, stepping forward. "Your Excellency, a wizard arrived in New York yesterday. His suitcase was full of magical creatures, and unfortunately, some have escaped." Tina had attempted to report this the previous day after apprehending Newt, but Pickery had dismissed her for not being an Auror and had refused to listen. "He arrived yesterday?" Pickery responded, her voice laced with accusation. "It's been 24 hours since an unregistered wizard released magical creatures in New York. And now, with a murder on our hands, you think it's the right time to inform us?" Tina was taken aback by Pickery's response, which seemed to implicate Newt as the murderer. Confused and horrified, she stammered, "Who was killed?" It dawned on her that she might have inadvertently made Newt a scapegoat. Pickery did not answer her question directly, but instead demanded, "Where is that wizard?" Faced with Pickery's intimidating gaze, Tina reluctantly placed the suitcase on the ground, unlocked it, and knocked on the lid with her fist. Newt, who had initially only violated a minor regulation, was now facing a murder charge. As the lid opened, Newt emerged, his expression tense and filled with embarrassment. Jacob followed, his previous excitement from their magical adventure replaced by confusion at the sight of the gathered crowd. In the silence that followed, the gravity of the situation became apparent. Tina, Newt, and Jacob found themselves at the center of a crisis that threatened to unravel the delicate balance between the magical and non-magical worlds. Newt Scamander found himself in an unexpected encounter. "Scamander," he heard, turning to see a familiar face. Hello, Minister," he greeted, a hint of embarrassment in his voice. The man before him was now the Minister of Magic for the United Kingdom. Under normal circumstances, meeting a fellow countryman abroad would be a cause for celebration. However, neither Newt nor the minister could muster much joy for this reunion. The reason for their discomfort was Newt's entanglement in a murder case, a situation made all the more complicated by the fact that Newt's brother, Theseus Scamander, was the chief Auror and head of the Auror office. It was well known within the Ministry of Magic just how protective Theseus was of his younger brother. By some accounts, Theseus would embrace Newt an average of 10 times out of every 9.5 meetings, the exceptions being when Newt managed to evade his brother's affectionate grasp. This protective streak was so pronounced that it was joked he would move heaven and earth to keep Newt out of jail. Tina Goldstein had brought 2 individuals to the scene, a wizard known for his affinity with magical creatures, and a no-mage. Despite Tina's explanation that the no-mage had been bitten by a magical creature, this did little to appease the senior officials. The audacity of bringing a no-mage into a place of magical significance was not lost on them. Among those present, Percival Graves, the Minister of Security for the Magical Congress of America, fixed his gaze on Newt. His eyes were sharp, betraying a mix of deep thought and barely concealed anger. Newt, oblivious to the tension, was engrossed in examining a holographic image floating in the room. He quickly deduced that it was not the work of a magical creature. This revelation shocked the audience and infuriated Pickery. "Don't push your luck, Mr. Scamander. There are no obscurials in America," she declared, her voice laced with denial. The implication of an obscurial's presence in America was too grave to admit. It suggested not only a failure in protecting no-mage lives, but also a significant blow to the prestige of American magical education and the effectiveness of the secrecy laws. Obscurials were born from the suppressed magical abilities of young witches and wizards, a phenomenon that magical education aimed to prevent. The existence of an obscurial in America would signify a failure on the part of Ilvermorny, the country's premier magical institution. Pickery's denial was swift and firm. "Confiscate that suitcase, Graves," she commanded. Graves, demonstrating his prowess in wandless magic, effortlessly seized Newt's case. "Arrest them," Pickery ordered. An invisible force propelled Newt forward, forcing him to the ground in a display of power that left no room for resistance. "No, don't hurt those creatures, please," Newt pleaded, his voice filled with despair as Aurors approached to detain him. "You don't understand. They're harmless." Pickery's response was cold and dismissive. "We'll be the judge of that. Take them to a cell." Newt faced the grim prospect of interrogation and possible conviction. Meanwhile, back at Newt's modest home, John transformed back into his human form after Newt's departure. He lounged comfortably, reaching out to caress an apple tree that Newt had transplanted. A bright red apple soon appeared, which John plucked, wiped clean, and bit into. "There's a lot of commotion," he mused, confident that Newt would somehow manage to resolve the situation. Noticing a photo of a woman on the table, he was momentarily distracted before a beautiful bird-snake creature approached, wrapping itself around his ankle. Perhaps it was John's ability to speak Parseltongue, or maybe his affinity with the Thunderbird, that drew the creature closer. John, harboring no dislike for snakes, a trait often associated with Slytherin, welcomed the creature, allowing it to coil around his wrist. "Let's see, you enjoy eating bugs, don't you?" he said, offering the apple to the bird snake, which took a tentative bite. As a giant dung beetle rolled past, John's attention shifted, a testament to the diverse and magical world that Newt Scamander navigated. The bird and snake simultaneously turned their heads, their eyes filled with eager curiosity. "No, don't even think about it," John gently admonished the newborn creatures, tempering their enthusiasm. Sensing the imminent arrival of someone, he carefully placed the bird and snake back into their nest. Rubbing his hands together in anticipation, he murmured, "It should be ready now." With a snap of his fingers, as if cracking an egg atop his head, his body began to fade until he vanished completely. Thanks to the soul potion, his physical form had nearly fully recuperated. The wandless spell he cast opened the lid of the box he was hiding in without a hitch. Stepping outside the hut, John noticed several individuals making their way into Newt's case. "Aurors," he mused, recognizing them by their precise movements and heightened alertness. Shortly after, one of the Aurors called out, "Minister Graves, you need to see this." A figure approached, and the searching Auror quickly went to brief him. Upon seeing this person, John's pupils narrowed into slits. Such excellent transfiguration skills, far more convenient than any potion, he thought to himself. As Graves arrived at the scene, all the Aurors tensed, ready for confrontation. They encircled a mysterious mass of black matter. "Silence," Graves commanded softly. Then, sensing something, he turned to look back. From the cave of the mooncalf, a creature basked in the moonlight emerged. Graves gave it a profound look before turning his attention back to the task at hand as more mooncalves appeared. Hidden in the shadows of the cave, John silently observed as they took the mysterious object away. "It seems Newt is in trouble," he concluded. After the group had departed, John emerged from the cave, contemplating his next move. Chapter 538. Hello, Tina Graves had taken Newt away for interrogation, leaving his leather case unattended in the office. Suddenly, the case began to move. The poorly secured latch popped open, and the lid flew up with a bang. "He really needs to fix that lock," a voice muttered. "Roar! Don't make me petrify you again, you satchel leopard," the voice warned. With a grunt, John emerged from the case, stretching his limbs. "As fascinating as the inside of that case is, the air outside seems preferable," he commented, taking a cautious sniff. "Actually, I retract that statement. The air here is rather foul, tainted with an unpleasant odor." He approached the door with a look of mild disgust. "Thorn," he muttered, reaching for the doorknob. A spark shot out, causing him to pause momentarily. With a snap of his fingers, he cloaked himself in an illusion spell and took a step back before forcefully kicking the door open. In the hallway, after rescuing Jacob from a near oblivion, Queenie led him to find Newt's case. Despite several attempts, they couldn't unlock the door with the unlocking charm. "He must have used some advanced spell on the door," Queenie said, disheartened. Jacob coughed, moved closer to the door, and after ensuring the coast was clear, he kicked the door open with a hefty boot. John, narrowly missed by the door, shrugged. Sometimes brute force is more effective than magic. "Who's there?" Queenie asked sharply. Jacob looked around, puzzled. "There's no one here." But Queenie was certain she had heard someone. Without further thought, they grabbed the case and hurried off, their mission to save others pressing on their minds. "Now how do I get back into the case?" John wondered, realizing he had missed his chance to sneak back in due to Jacob's forceful entry. The thought of Newt discovering an 80-foot dragon missing was enough to send anyone into a frenzy. Without a wand, John was reluctant to cast spells, fearing a repeat of past mishaps where a spell intended to repair ended up causing destruction. "I'll have to rely on my own abilities," he sighed, thankful for his diverse skill set. "Hopefully, I can return before they open the case." Meanwhile, alarms blared throughout the Magical Congress. It seemed that every person from Hogwarts had a knack for stirring trouble. Newt and Tina, facing execution for the alleged crime of endangering Muggles, found themselves in a dire situation. A bowtruckle freed Newt with a clever maneuver, while a winged golem swooped in to rescue Tina from a deadly potion. Hand in hand, they fled the execution chamber. As they navigated the corridors, aurors, alerted by the alarms, pursued them. Newt's defensive spells incapacitated several aurors, but their persistence was unyielding. Suddenly, aurors began to fall unconscious without Newt's intervention. Confused and alarmed, Tina questioned Newt, who was just as bewildered. Rounding a corner, they encountered Queenie and Jacob. The tension was palpable. All four were now fugitives. Queenie, holding the case, proposed a plan. "Go in," she suggested, opening the case to hide them. It was a brilliant solution. Just as Jacob was about to enter, he felt a nudge. "Hey, don't rush," he protested. "We didn't push you, Jacob," Newt replied, looking puzzled. Confused, Jacob hesitated. "Wasn't it you?" "Come on, Jacob, hurry inside," Newt urged, and Jacob stepped into the case, entering a little house within. Inside, John, having accidentally knocked over an iron bucket in his haste, decided not to dwell on it and leaped out the door, his body sprouting scales as he ran. After Newt and the others entered, John leaned against a rock, feigning sleep. Back in the hall of the Magical Congress, Queenie, case in hand, walked briskly, trying to blend in and appear inconspicuous. John leaned against the rock, fatigue evident in his posture, as he addressed the Thunderbird beside him. "I know it looks a bit worn out," he said, "but nothing untoward happened, right?" The Thunderbird responded with a flap of its wings. John then turned his attention to the trio inside the small house. Tina, upon catching sight of the creature's large reddish-brown eyes, couldn't help but startle. "Don't be afraid," Newt reassured her. "That's the shadow of the extinct, a rather friendly fire dragon." "The shadow of the extinct?" Tina repeated, her tone betraying her skepticism towards the name's ominous sound. "Hello, shadow of the extinct world," Jacob greeted, addressing John with a nod. "You must have had quite the day," John remarked, eyeing Jacob, shedding some weight in the process. "Really?" Jacob responded, patting his round belly skeptically, questioning the accuracy of John's observation. "It can speak?" Tina asked, her voice laced with disbelief. "Yes, he can," Newt confirmed, introducing Tina to the creature. "This is Miss Goldstein." Tina Goldstein," she corrected, her former auror training lending her a courage not commonly found among wizards. Observing that John posed no immediate threat, she gradually mustered more bravery. "Hello, Tina Goldstein," John said, extending his massive dragon claw towards her. Tina, showing remarkable boldness, carefully clasped the sharp claw in her hand. "Nice to meet you," she said, a wave of relief washing over her. At that moment, the box opened, and Queenie's voice emerged. "It's safe." The three individuals were beckoned out. John transformed back into his human form, rubbing his neck. "I'll continue to rest on the rock. I feel as though my neck might snap," he complained, hoping for Newt to retrieve his wand soon. The prospect of living indefinitely as a fire dragon, albeit with the power to intimidate and dominate, seemed unappealing and monotonous to him. "Another collision?" John pondered, retrieving 4 rune snake eggs from his bag. The previous successful taboo collision had relied on a flash effect, but replicating it would require substantial magical power and soul energy. While a return to Azkaban wasn't out of the question, it would necessitate some time. Opening a black book, John mused, "You will play the final role." He glanced at an hourglass filled with sands of time, a relic from his adventures in the pyramid. What he needed now was sufficient magical power. The power of a magical collision could serve my purposes, John thought, stroking his chin as he contemplated his return. An idea suddenly struck him. "Silence," he murmured to himself. In the streets of New York, within an alley by the Second Salem Church, a man was busy posting a flyer for an upcoming rally. Graves, the Secretary of Security for the Magical Congress of America, appeared with a sense of urgency. "Credence, have you located the child?" he inquired. "I can't," Credence replied, his voice tinged with fear. Despite his impatience, Credence attempted to maintain a facade of calm, offering a semblance of concern and affection. "Show me," he insisted gently. Credence, visibly shaken and haunted by painful memories, hesitated. Graves took his hand, examining the bright red marks left by the beatings from Credence's adoptive mother, a fervent anti-wizard activist who never showed him love, only hatred and violence. "Shh, good boy," Graves whispered in a tone Credence had never heard before, his thumb gently tracing the bruises. "The sooner we find that child, the sooner you can escape your suffering," he said, his voice enchanting yet sinister, like poison seeping into Credence's mind. Graves produced a necklace adorned with symbols and placed it around Credence's neck. "I rarely trust people this much," he confessed in a low, raspy voice, his words heavy with implication. "But you're different," he concluded, marking a pivotal moment in their twisted relationship. Hesitating, Credence found himself enveloped by Graves, who gently wrapped his hands around his neck, drawing him closer. Step by step, Credence was led into a beautifully woven, dreamlike trap by Graves. With a tenderness that shattered all of Credence's defenses, Graves whispered promises of respect and admiration, roamed the wizarding world, pulling him into an embrace that made it impossible for Credence to pull away from the intimate contact. "You will be respected, always respected," Graves assured him, his voice a soothing balm to Credence's frayed nerves. Dangling from Credence's neck, the familiar symbol of the Deathly Hallows shimmered, its presence both comforting and ominous. It seemed to pulse with a life of its own, drawing people into its depths, making them sink into the allure it represented. The symbol, a beacon of power and mystery, hung heavily, a constant reminder of the world Credence was being drawn into, a world where power could either uplift or destroy. Chapter 539. Hello, Invisible Beast. Dusk settled over the city as 3 wizards and a no-mage stood on a rooftop, overlooking the urban expanse. Among them was Jacob, who nostalgically recalled his childhood spent feeding pigeons in a loft similar to the one they were near. His grandfather had kept pigeons, and those memories were dear to him, filled with the warmth of his grandmother's toast and the cooing birds. Queenie, a natural legilimens who could sense Jacob's thoughts, joined the conversation. "Your grandfather kept pigeons? My grandfather kept owls. I used to love feeding them," she shared, finding common ground that brought her and Jacob closer. Tina and Newt were also present, gazing out at the city. Tina voiced her concerns about the recent riots, which Graves had been blaming on magical creatures. "Graves has been emphasizing that those riots are caused by magical creatures. We need to get all your animals back, so we can't use them as scapegoats anymore," she said, troubled by Graves' unsettling behavior, especially towards Momo, which had made Newt wary. "There's only one left, Dougal, my invisible beast," Newt replied, his affection for his creatures evident in the way he spoke of them, not as pets, but as friends or family members. "Dougal?" Tina asked, intrigued and amused by the notion of an invisible creature. Newt, catching a glimpse of Tina's beautiful eyes, responded with a hint of humor. "The little problem is, well, we can't see it." "Can't see it?" Tina laughed, finding the idea both ridiculous and endearing. "Yes, most of the time, it's invisible," Newt admitted, amused by his own statement, acknowledging the challenge with a smile. "It's indeed harder than reaching the sky." Their shared laughter and smiles brought them closer, and for a moment, Newt found himself captivated by Tina's smile. Then, Tina had a sudden realization. "Narlak!" she exclaimed. Newt, puzzled, asked, "What?" "Narlak," Tina repeated excitedly. "I used him as an informant when I was an Auror. He used to secretly trade magical creatures." The revelation that Narlak might be interested in the whereabouts of magical creatures sparked a new plan. With a determined look, Tina led the group through the grimy alleys to the Blind Pig Bar, a place known for its dealings in the magical underworld. As they approached the bar, hidden behind a poster of a courtesan, the group transformed their appearances with magic, ready to blend in. Jacob was taken aback by the transformation, while Newt conjured a bow tie for himself. Meanwhile, back at their temporary base, John lay on Newt's camp bed, engrossed in the dark god book, contemplating the complexities of time travel. Time, he sighed, realizing the limitations of the time turner, which only allowed travel to the past, not the future. As he pondered the challenge of jumping from the past to the future, Niffler, ever the flatterer, blinked and massaged John's feet, hoping for a bit of affection or perhaps a shiny reward. This chapter sets the stage for an intriguing adventure, blending the quest to protect magical creatures with the complexities of time travel and the deepening relationships among the characters. John deftly flicked a gold coin with his fingers, a gesture that delighted Shikshu, who eagerly pocketed the coin. "You're welcome," John said, though he refrained from mentioning that the coin was actually taken from Shikshu's own stash. Unaware of this, Shikshu believed he had encountered a generous benefactor and redoubled his efforts in service. The Dark Godbook no longer held any sway over John, as if acknowledging its inevitable fate. Immersed in the sands of time, John noticed subtle transformations within his body, particularly in his liver. He raised his left hand, observing the snake tattoo that coiled around his wrist, morphing into an Ouroboros, a symbol of eternity and renewal. Magic power is essential for stability, John mused. He knew that reaching level 7 in magic power would resolve his current predicament, but he was not here yet. His magical prowess and his status as a silent observer were still lacking. The last time he had pushed his limits, detonating his wand, utilizing the soul lamp, and invoking a curse, he had managed to scrape by. With a flick of his fingers, the Ouroboros ring burst into a dazzling golden light. Unseen by Shikshu, who was diligently massaging John, a gold coin slipped from Shikshu's pocket and returned to John's hand. John flicked the coin again, producing a sound that caught Shikshu's attention. Delighted, Shikshu pocketed the coin, marveling at John's apparent generosity. "Silence?" John pondered, recalling Newt's mention of the silent attack before his capture by the Magical Congress. The existence of a silent force in New York intrigued him. A single silent magic power might be insufficient, but what about combining two? John had come to understand an important truth through his interactions with Gale and others. As long as the outcome remains unchanged, the future will not be disrupted. Events confirmed to happen will proceed as long as the end result is the same. Tossing another gold coin to Shikshu, who had by now fully embraced John as a figure of authority, John signaled that Shikshu could leave. Shikshu returned to her nest, excitedly counting the gold coins she believed she had received. However, confusion set in when she found only one coin. After a thorough search, the realization that the other coins were missing left Shikshu stunned and indignant, humorously contemplating calling the police over the theft. Meanwhile, John, who had actually given only one gold coin, benefited from services worth far more. He returned to the rocks, where he examined the remaining treasures in the pyramid, a golden scale, scepter, and mask, symbolizing fairness, resurrection, and wisdom, respectively. These artifacts, untouched by time, were key to High Erbo's plan for resurrection, or more accurately, the reconstitution of his body. John contemplated the nature of a soul divided, questioning whether both consciousnesses could coexist peacefully, or if one would inevitably seek to dominate. This dilemma, he realized, might have led High Erbo to protect the true treasure with the Dark Godbook, rather than the more cunning human-faced snake. Sensing the return of his companions, John quickly concealed the artifacts. His body sprouted scales as he transformed, blending into the shadows of the world. Perched atop a rock, he lay in wait, watching over the hut, ready for whatever came next. Each departure and return of Newt and the others marked the beginning of a new chapter in their intertwined destinies. As the trio departed, their numbers soon increased to 4. Jacob, with a grin, cradled the invisible beast in his arms. Beside him, Tina, gently holding a baby Snidget, followed Newt's lead into the room. Despite being deceived by the goblin Narlak earlier that day, they had successfully located the invisible beast. Newt had discovered that the creature had ventured outside to care for an escaped baby serpent. Holding his wand, Newt expressed his confusion. "I don't understand. Where did this wand come from?" The location where they found the invisible beast was a Muggle department store, an unlikely place to find a wizard's wand. Upon their arrival, they observed the invisible beast tenderly feeding a baby bird, all the while keeping a wand securely protected. It seemed the baby bird and serpent had inadvertently knocked the wand away, and the invisible beast, recognizing its importance to its owner, had taken it upon itself to safeguard the wand. As Newt pondered this mystery, the invisible beast, caught in its own den and on the verge of being freed, suddenly embraced Jacob. Jacob, mistaking the creature's action for affection, responded with a warm smile. "Are you happy to be going home? You must be tired, my friend. I'm fond of you too." Suddenly, a shadow enveloped Jacob, catching him off guard. The room fell silent as the unexpected turn of events unfolded, leaving everyone in a state of surprise and curiosity about the violent, invisible beast's actions and the mysterious origins of the wand. Chapter 540. Greetings, Miss Sweetheart. Jacob turned his head, and upon seeing the giant dragon, greeted it with a cheerful tone. "Hello, shadow of the extinct world. It's good to see you again." His demeanor remained unchanged, whether coming or going. However, Queenie was visibly startled, as this was her first encounter with such a creature. Jacob reassured her, "Don't worry, this is the shadow of the world, a dragon known for its willingness to help." He fondly recalled the kindness of John's intervention. Without it, Jacob would have likely met his end under the poison-horn beast's wrath. "Shadow of destruction?" Queenie, both curious and amazed, whispered, "This is certainly the largest dragon I've ever laid eyes on." "All right, little one, it's time for you to descend," Jacob coaxed the invisible beast clinging to him, offering a smile towards John. "I believe you've given it quite the scare." "That's not frightening," John remarked, his gaze fixed on the invisible creature, which then retreated into its den, refusing to emerge. Queenie, driven by curiosity, approached John. "Would someone care to introduce me? Miss Sweetheart," John said, glancing at the wand in Newt's grasp. Newt, holding a wand of mysterious origin, placed it on the platform, preoccupied with resolving his own conflict with the bowtruckle. "It seems my wand has served its purpose," John observed, his attention returning to the wand. Queenie, standing close to John, paused and looked up at him in surprise. Jacob joined her side, commenting, "It's quite unusual, isn't it? Have you ever encountered a dragon capable of speech?" "Yes, but—" Queenie's expression shifted as she heard a voice declare, "When they leave, I'll take the wand and depart." She was certain this voice belonged to neither Newt nor anyone else present. It emanated from the colossal dragon before her. Jacob whispered, "He's observing you," snapping Queenie out of her reverie. With a forced smile, she introduced herself. "Hi, my name is Queenie Goldstein." "Hello, Queenie," John greeted her. After a brief pause, he inquired, "Has anyone ever mentioned that it's impolite to delve into others' minds without permission?" Queenie, caught in the act, saw John's expression soften. He hadn't anticipated someone would attempt to penetrate a dragon's mind. "Legilimency?" he questioned. "Sorry." Queenie stepped back, shrugging apologetically. "I can't always control it." "A natural legilimens?" John remarked, surprised. "That's quite the rare gift." Feeling more at ease, Queenie smiled sweetly. "It can be a bit troublesome at times. I believe your school might have some literature on the subject." "Wait, school?" Jacob interjected with keen interest. "Is there a school? A school for magic? In America?" "Of course, Ilvermorny," Queenie replied with pride, referring to her alma mater. "It's the finest magic school in the world." "No, the finest magic school in the world is Hogwarts," Newt interjected, momentarily setting aside his dispute with the bowtruckle to organize the strawberries. Upon hearing this, Queenie crossed her arms, retorting, "Nonsense," which elicited laughter from Tina. The group shared a moment of camaraderie. "May I ask?" Queenie hesitated before deciding to inquire further, addressing John. "What did you mean about your wand? And leaving?" "Wand? What wand?" Jacob appeared confused, and Newt seemed equally perplexed. John sighed. "I had hoped you'd refrain from asking, to spare yourself some trouble, dear Queenie." "What do you mean?" Newt asked, looking at John. John's massive form rose as he explained. "Quite simply, I believe it's time for us to part ways, Newt." "Wait, shadow of world extinction," Newt called out as John raised his hand, summoning the wand from the platform into his grasp. He pondered, "It's time to depart." "Mirage," John announced. In the next instant, fog enveloped the box, concealing John completely. "Shadow of destruction," Newt exclaimed, rushing forward, only to find the dragon's enormous form vanishing into thin air. "How is this possible?" Tina gasped, her eyes wide with disbelief. "How did this happen?" The sight of a giant dragon disappearing right before their eyes was baffling. Was it magic? "Newt," Jacob exclaimed, looking out into the wilderness. Something seems amiss. A thunderstorm loomed ominously, signaling the beginning of an unexpected turn of events. The sky was alive with the sound of Frank, the Thunderbird, as he soared into the air with a piercing scream. His wings beat furiously, his body shimmering in hues of black and gold, while a spark of lightning flashed in his eyes. "Danger," Newt murmured, observing the Thunderbird with a furrowed brow. "It senses danger." Meanwhile, the night cloaked Brooklyn in darkness. A sinister, swirling mass of unknown entities sliced through the high-rise buildings of New York, leaving chaos in its wake. Cars were hurled through the air, sidewalks were shattered, and buildings crumbled. Amidst this havoc, a figure fled in silence. Atop a building, a white-haired wizard stood, his attention on the wand he twirled between his fingers. The wand, new and white, danced at his command, as a gentle breeze played with his hair. Gazing at the tumultuous black energy below, John remarked with surprise, "So it has grown to adulthood? It's exceedingly rare for one to survive to such an age. Its power is truly formidable." As a car was flung towards him, John effortlessly waved his hand, redirecting it to the side. Below, an 8-year-old boy and his best friend witnessed the destruction. As the malevolent force tore through a building, debris threatened to engulf them. In a twist of fate, the car John had deflected moments earlier cleared the debris, saving them. "Run, Steve," one boy cried. "Bucky, someone out there needs help." The other, a frail boy, responded, rushing to aid an injured woman. His sturdy friend, concerned, followed closely behind. Unbeknownst to John, his casual gesture had saved lives. With another flick of his wand, he transported himself to another rooftop. Across the way, under a large sign reading Squire, Newt and his companions emerged, drawn by the commotion. The city's sirens wailed, signaling the widespread alarm. Newt's expression was grave. "This is more powerful than any obscurial I've encountered," he said. The situation was dire. The statute of secrecy was in jeopardy, and the wizarding world risked exposure. An explosion in the distance set the city ablaze. Newt, unable to stand idly by, prepared to act. Entrusting his magical case to Tina, he pulled out his notes. "If I don't return, take care of my creatures," he said, avoiding Tina's gaze. "Everything you need to know is in here." With a heavy heart, he met Tina's eyes one last time before disappearing with a pop. "Tina," she called out, rushing after him. But not before handing the case to her sister, Queenie. Queenie, holding Jacob's hand, sensed his shock at the unfolding events. What a pair of madmen, she thought. John, growing tired of the spectacle, stepped off the building and vanished, only to reappear in Times Square. There, the Obscurial's power surged, fueled by a lifetime of loneliness and abuse. Within the swirling mass, Credence's face emerged, twisted with pain and sorrow. His emotions, raw and powerful, amplified the Obscurial's strength. "It's in your body. How long can you keep it?" John mused. "Credence, you are a miracle." Graves shouted from the street, trying to persuade the young man. "Think of what we can achieve together." But Credence, already wounded by betrayal, was unmoved. "Why does this guy seem like a charlatan?" John observed from his perch, watching Graves get knocked aside by the Obscurial. He couldn't help but feel a deep aversion to the man. From behind an overturned car, Newt watched the scene unfold, his heart heavy with the knowledge of the mysterious and powerful forces at play. Perched atop a street lamp, a wizard surveyed the chaos below. Tina, taking cover behind a smoldering car wreck, locked eyes with Newt. "It's the boy from the Econ Salem group. He's an Obscurial," Newt informed Tina, his voice laced with concern. This revelation brought back a flood of memories for Tina, memories of her punishment by the Magical Congress for her attempts to aid the boy. These were the very memories Newt had glimpsed in the pool during their near execution. Tina, confusion etched across her face, countered, "But he's no longer a child." "He must possess immense strength to have survived this long," Newt replied, his tone a mixture of awe and sorrow. "It's truly remarkable." A silent resolve took hold of Tina, and with determination fueling her actions, she made a bold decision. "Newt, we have to save that kid." Without waiting for a response, Tina dashed towards Graves, intent on thwarting his efforts to subdue the Obscurial. Graves, caught off guard by Tina's sudden intervention, momentarily faltered. Seizing the opportunity, the Obscurial darted towards the street, desperate for escape. Newt, poised to give chase, glanced upwards one last time, only to find the street lamp now devoid of its wizardly occupant. The white-haired wizard had vanished into the night, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions and a rapidly unfolding crisis below.